Chosen one, stop. Whatever you are about to do next, let it wait 90 seconds. Because the biggest goodbye of your life is already in motion, and it is not going to announce itself. That pressure sitting behind your ribs, that tiredness that sleep does not fix, and that strange new habit you have developed of checking your phone for a message you already know is not coming. Do not let anyone tell you that is anxiety. That is a room in your life being emptied while you are still standing inside it. Maybe the last 72 hours have felt unusually still, not peaceful. Still, there is a difference, and your body knows it, even if your mind has not found the word yet. Perhaps somebody who used to reply within minutes now takes a day and answers in fewer words than before. Maybe a conversation you used to be the center of moved on without you, and nobody was cruel about it, which somehow made it worse. Or maybe you have been lying awake at 3 in the morning, staring at the ceiling, trying to locate the exact moment things changed between you and someone you love, and you cannot find it. You keep rewinding, looking for the argument, the sentence, the mistake. There was not one. That is what has been keeping you awake, not the loss, the absence of a reason. But hear this clearly, because everything in this message rests on it. It is not rejection, it is subtraction. The biggest goodbye of your life is not something being taken from you. It is something being subtracted for you, so that the next room can hold you. And within the next 24 hours, that ache of not knowing what you did wrong can begin to loosen its grip. Not because you will get the apology. You may never get the apology. But because you are about to be handed the one thing nobody gave you when it ended. An explanation. There is an opposing force working overtime around your life right now, and it is not working on the person who left. It is working on you. It wants you to interpret quiet as verdict. It wants you to translate silence into the sentence you have feared your whole life, which is that you were never really wanted, only tolerated. It is working that hard for one reason, because if you ever understood what silence actually means in your particular story, you would become almost impossible to manipulate. You are not becoming stronger because people finally stayed. You are becoming stronger because you learned how to stand in a room after the door closed and not go running after the sound of footsteps. Think back to that moment this week, the one where you drafted the message and then deleted it, or you picked up the phone, looked at the name, and set it back down. Or you rehearsed the whole conversation in the car and then walked into the house and said nothing. You thought that was weakness. You thought that was you being a coward, or being too proud, or being unable to fight for what matters. It was none of those things. That was the first quiet act of obedience in a season that is going to be built entirely out of quiet acts. Your restraint was not silence. Your restraint was a door being closed gently instead of slammed. And gently is how heaven prefers to close things over people it intends to protect. You did not find this message by accident. The algorithm may have placed it in front of you, but something older than any system built by human hands is the reason your thumb stopped moving on this exact sentence at this exact hour. So stay with me all the way to the end, because in the next stretch of this message, I am going to do 3 things for you. I am going to show you exactly how to tell the difference between a season that is ending and a relationship you are simply neglecting, so you stop grieving things that are still alive and stop resuscitating things that are already gone. I am going to walk you through the specific reason a quiet ending hurts more than a loud one, which is a real mechanism and not a feeling, and once you see it, you will never be confused by it again. And I am going to hand you the exact test to apply before you reopen any door in the next 30 days. Do not walk away from this. Your future self needs the next few minutes more than you understand right now. If you leave this message unchanged, you will most likely spend the coming weeks doing the one thing that restarts the whole cycle, which is knocking politely on an empty house and calling the silence an answer. There has been a specific lie whispered over your life lately, and I want to say it out loud so it loses its power. The lie is that you are easy to leave, that people get to a certain distance from you and then quietly decide you are not worth the effort, that you are the common denominator. You have been turning that sentence over in your hands at 3 in the morning like a stone you cannot put down. It is a lie, and the evidence against it is sitting in your own history if you are willing to look. You are not easy to leave. You are difficult to stay near while carrying something that is not meant for the next part of your life. Those are not the same thing, not remotely, and the difference between them is the difference between a person who spends the next 10 years apologizing and a person who spends the next 10 years building. There is a line in Habakkuk that says, "The vision is for an appointed time, and though it tarries, wait for it." Most people read that verse as comfort about the future. Read it again as a description of the present. If the vision has an appointed time, then so does everything that cannot come with you into it. Not everything is being taken. Some things are simply arriving at their own appointed ending, on schedule, exactly when they were always going to. That appointed ending is not somewhere far away. It is not next year. For a great many people hearing this, it already happened, and this message is the notification arriving late. Chosen one, let me give this thing its name, because unnamed pain is the heaviest kind of pain there is. What you are living through is the quiet subtraction. A quiet subtraction is an ending with no ceremony, no argument, no betrayal, no dramatic exit line, just a slow reduction in a person, or a season, or a version of your life, until one day you look up and realize the volume has been turned down so gradually that you never noticed the moment the sound stopped. Nobody was the villain, nothing was resolved, and it is over anyway. The reason this hurts more than betrayal is not weakness on your part, it is architecture. Betrayal comes with a story. A story has a beginning, a middle, and a place to put the blame, and the human mind can file a story away. A quiet subtraction comes with no story at all, so your mind cannot file it. It leaves the folder open, and every single day, without asking your permission, it goes back to that open folder and tries again and again. And that is where your energy has been going. That is not depression, though it can look exactly like it from the outside. That is a mind performing unpaid overtime on an unfinished task. You have been running a background process for months, sometimes years, and wondering why you never have enough left over for the things you actually love. I want you to check something against your own life while we are here, and I want you to be honest, even though nobody is watching. Your body knew first. Your body always knows first. There was a period, weeks before your mind admitted anything, where your sleep changed. Maybe you started waking at the same hour every night without an alarm. Maybe your appetite went strange in one direction or the other. Maybe you developed a tightness in your jaw or your shoulders that no massage fixed because it was never a muscle problem. Then your emotions caught up. You noticed you were suddenly tired around a certain person. Not angry at them, tired. Being with them started to feel like a task you had to prepare for, and you felt guilty about that tiredness because they had not done anything wrong, and so you doubled your effort to prove to yourself that you still cared. That doubling is the sound a season makes when it is ending. Then your dreams got involved. You started dreaming of houses, old houses, childhood houses, houses with rooms you did not remember, houses where you were packing but never finished packing. Or you dreamed of trying to speak and producing no sound. Or the same person appeared night after night saying nothing at all, just present, just watching. Your dreams were not predicting the future. They were reporting a decision that had already been made somewhere deeper than your opinions. And then the outside world started confirming it. Plans that used to make themselves now required organizing. Invitations arrived later than they used to, and sometimes stopped. Somebody said we should catch up soon, and both of you heard the word soon do the work that no calendar was ever going to do. If you recognized yourself in most of that, I want you to sit with something for a moment. You are not paranoid, you are perceptive. Those are two words for the same evidence, and which one you use decides who you become over the next 2 years. Now, I want to take you to the hardest part of a quiet subtraction, because this is where most people get stuck for a decade. Somewhere in the recent past, you had your last ordinary day with someone, and you did not know it was the last one. That is what I mean by the last ordinary day. It was not a special occasion. That is exactly the point. It was a Tuesday. You were in a car, or a kitchen, or a shop. They said something slightly funny and you laughed with your mouth full. You talked about something completely disposable, the weather, a program, somebody at work, a plan neither of you was serious about. You did not take a photograph. You did not look at their face and memorize it, because why would you? There was no reason to think that particular afternoon was going to be the last time the two of you were ever going to be like that. And now, months later, your mind keeps going back to that ordinary afternoon and you cannot understand why. It was not important. Nothing happened. But your spirit has been circling that day like a bird over water, and you have started to wonder whether something is wrong with you. Nothing is wrong with you. Your spirit has been trying to hold a funeral. Here is what happens in a loud ending. Somebody betrays you, or leaves with a speech, or dies, and there is a moment. A door slams, a car pulls away, a phone call comes. Your mind has a marker, a timestamp, a piece of geography it can point at and say, there, that is where it ended. And painful as that marker is, it is a gift, because the mind needs a place to put down what it is carrying. In a quiet subtraction, no such marker exists. The ending was distributed across 400 small moments, none of which was heavy enough to notice on its own, which means your mind has nowhere to set the weight down, so it keeps holding it. That is why a friendship that faded over 2 years can sit heavier on your chest than a breakup that took an afternoon. So, I want you to do something, and I want you to do it deliberately, because this is the first real piece of work in this message, and it will cost you something. Go find that ordinary day, not the fight, if there was one, not the last message, the last ordinary day, the last time it was simply normal between you, before anything started tilting. You already know which one it is. Your spirit brought it up 3 or 4 times while I was describing it. Now, in your own mind, stand in that day for a moment. See the room, notice the light, hear the tone of their voice before it changed, and then say, quietly, inside yourself, so this was the last one. That sentence is doing something specific. It is not sentimentality. You are placing a marker. You are giving your mind the timestamp it was never given, and a mind that finally has a timestamp can begin to close the folder. Not today, not completely, but it can begin. And notice what you are not doing. You are not deciding whether they were right or wrong. You are not writing the ending in a way that makes you the hero or the fool. You are simply agreeing with reality about when something happened. Most people cannot do that, because agreeing with reality about the timing feels like agreeing with reality about the value. It is not. That afternoon was real. The laughing was real. The love in it was real. None of that gets taken away by the fact that it was the last one. Chosen one. This is the part I need you to hear with everything in you. The ending of a thing does not reach backwards and delete the thing. You have been living as though it does. You have been going back through years of your own life, reinterpreting good memories as evidence that you were being fooled, editing your own history so that the ending makes sense. Stop editing. The good parts were good. The person who showed up for you in that season really did show up for you in that season. Something can be completely genuine and still be finished. That is not cynicism. That is the highest form of gratitude a person can practice, because it is gratitude that does not require the thing to still be here in order to count. And here is the thing about the last ordinary day that nobody ever tells you. The fact that it was ordinary is the mercy. If you had known, you would have ruined it. You would have spent the whole afternoon watching yourself have the afternoon. You would have been recording instead of living, grieving in advance instead of laughing with your mouth full. You were given one final, completely unself-conscious hour with that person, and you got to spend it being fully alive rather than fully aware. That was not an oversight, that was a kindness. And it is the first piece of evidence in this message that the quiet is not neglect. Chosen one, I want to stay in this place a while longer, because there is something underneath the last ordinary day that almost nobody examines, and it is the thing that has been quietly deciding how you feel about yourself. You have been asking the wrong question about that afternoon. You have been asking, How did I not see it coming? That question has kept some of you up for a year. It carries an accusation inside it. It implies that a more perceptive person, a less naive person, a person who was paying proper attention, would have noticed. And so, every time you ask it, you deposit another small piece of evidence into a case you have been building against yourself. I want to dismantle that question, because it is not a question. It is a verdict wearing a question mark. You did not see it coming because it was not visible. That is what a quiet subtraction is. It is not a thing that happens in front of you, and you miss it. It is a thing that happens across hundreds of moments, so small that noticing any one of them would have made you look unstable. Imagine you had noticed. Imagine 4 months before it ended, you had turned to that person and said, "Something has shifted between us, and I need to know what it is." What would have happened? You know exactly what would have happened. They would have looked at you with genuine confusion and said, "Nothing has changed. You are overthinking this." And they would have meant it, because at that stage they did not know either. And you would have walked away from that conversation feeling foolish, and you would have added it to the pile of evidence that you are too much, and the season would have ended anyway, 4 months later, with one extra humiliation attached to it. You did not fail to notice. You noticed, and you were told you were wrong, either by them or by your own trained instinct to distrust yourself. And both of those are the same wound wearing different clothes. So let the question go. Replace it with a better one. Not how did I not see it, but what did the part of me that did see it try to tell me, and why did I not believe her? Because you did see it. There was a Tuesday, somewhere in there, when you had a feeling in a hallway or a car, and you dismissed it within about 4 seconds. That dismissal is the actual pattern, and it is worth more attention than the ending itself. Chosen one, I want to say something about that dismissal, because it is going to run your next season if we do not deal with it now. Somewhere in your life you learned that your perception was a liability. Perhaps you were a child who noticed the atmosphere in a house and mentioned it and was told nothing is wrong. Perhaps you were the one who could feel a mood change 3 rooms away and was called sensitive, and sensitive was not said as a compliment. So you built a habit. You feel something, you register it accurately, and then you immediately begin arguing against yourself on behalf of everybody else. You construct the case for why you are being unfair. You imagine their reasons for them. You become the defense attorney for a person who has not even been accused. That habit is why you were the last to know about something you were the first to feel. And I want to give you something that will change how the next 2 years go, and it costs nothing. For the next month, when you get one of those signals, do not act on it and do not dismiss it. Write 1 line down, date, and what you noticed. That is all. No conclusion, no interpretation. In 4 weeks, read the list. What happens to people who do this is the same every time, and it is not subtle. They discover their perception has been running at a much higher accuracy than they were giving it credit for, and something fundamental shifts in the relationship they have with their own mind. You cannot argue somebody into trusting themselves. You can only show them the record. Chosen one, let me tell you about a woman, and I am going to keep her details vague because they belong to her. She was in her 40s, and she had a friendship that ended so quietly she could not identify a single moment where anything had gone wrong. 12 years. Holidays together. The kind of friend who has a key to your house. And it simply thinned. Replies got slower, plans got harder. Nothing was ever said. What she described to me was not the sadness. She had expected the sadness. What she had not expected was the specific torment of not knowing which version of the story was true. Because 2 versions existed and she could not tell which one she was living in. In the first version, the friendship had run its natural course, as friendships sometimes do, and her friend had simply moved into a different phase of life. Nothing personal, nothing to solve. In the second version, she had done something she was not aware of, something she said or failed to say, or a way she had been over the years that finally became too much for somebody who had been too kind to mention it. And she said the sentence that I want to give you tonight, because it names the actual injury. She said, I could survive either story. I cannot survive not knowing which one I am in. That is it. That is the whole thing. It was never the loss. It was the ambiguity. And here is why that matters more than anything else I could tell you in this hour. Because there is a way through ambiguity, and it is not the way you have been trying. You have been trying to resolve it by thinking, by going back over the evidence again and again looking for the detail that settles it. And you cannot settle it by thinking, because the information required is not in your possession. It is inside another person, and they are not going to give it to you. The way through ambiguity is not resolution. It is a decision about how to hold it. So, decide now, deliberately, which version you are going to carry. Not because you know, because you get to choose what you carry when knowledge is unavailable. And one of those versions makes you smaller, and one of them lets you keep walking. That is not self-deception. Self-deception would be inventing a fact. You are not inventing anything. You are selecting from two equally unproven possibilities, the one that does not require you to live as a suspect in your own life. Chosen one, hear me on this. In the absence of evidence, you are not obligated to prosecute yourself. You have been holding a trial for 2 years with no witnesses, no charges, and no prosecutor except you, and you have been losing. Adjourn it. Not forgiven, not absolved, not resolved. Adjourned for lack of evidence. That is a legitimate outcome, and it is the only one available. Now let me show you something about the quiet itself, because we have been treating it as the problem, and I want to turn it over one more time before we go on. Notice how much of your life has been arranged around noise. Not music, noise. The particular kind of low-grade activity that stops a person from being alone with themselves. The phone that gets checked at traffic lights. The program playing in a room nobody is watching. The habit of filling a silence in conversation before it has been allowed to sit for even 3 seconds. The way a certain kind of person cannot drive without something on. None of that is a moral failure. It is management. Because in the quiet, things surface. And if a person has been carrying an unprocessed ending, the quiet is where it comes to talk. So, a great many people arrange their entire lives so that the quiet never happens. And they succeed. And they get to their 60s having never once been alone with what they were carrying. And the carrying does not stop. It just never gets addressed. Your season has removed your noise. That is what has actually happened to you. The people are fewer, the invitations are thinner, the house is more silent, and everything you have been out running has caught up with you because you finally stopped moving. That feels like punishment. It is the opposite. You are being given the exact conditions required for a thing to be dealt with, and those conditions are almost impossible to arrange on purpose. Nobody chooses this. It has to be done to a person. And here is your evidence that it is intentional rather than random. Look at what has been removed, and look at what has stayed. Not everything went, somebody stayed, something stayed. A person, a routine, a small daily thing that still works. If this were destruction, it would have taken the load-bearing walls. Look at your life honestly, and you will find that whatever has been taken, the structure is intact. You are still standing. You are still able to work, still able to love somebody, still able to be moved by a message from a stranger at an hour when you should be asleep. That is not the signature of something trying to end you. That is the signature of something clearing a room with a great deal of care about what it leaves standing. Now, I want to pause and hold something in front of you before we go any further, because it belongs here and not later. Over the past few years, something was found inside research laboratories that almost nobody in spiritual circles has been told about. Not because it contradicts anything sacred, because it arrived from a direction most of us are not watching. A small team, led by a physician in New York who has spent 2 decades on this one question, found something about the way the human mind is built that explains a thing spiritually sensitive people have felt for their entire lives and have never once been able to name. I am going to tell you what they found later in this message. For now, just hold this question somewhere in the back of your mind. What if the reason you cannot close a chapter is not a failure of faith at all? Hold that. We will come back to it. Chosen one, let me take you into the second layer of this, because what I am about to describe is going to reorganize how you see the last 2 years of your life. There is a word people use when someone withdraws from them, and the word is rejection. It is a heavy word. It carries a verdict inside it. Rejection means you were examined, measured, and found insufficient. And once your mind reaches for that word, everything after it gets contaminated, because you begin building your future on top of a verdict that was never actually handed down. I want to offer you a different word, and I want you to test it against your own history rather than simply accept it because I said it. The word is subtraction. Rejection is about your worth. Subtraction is about the shape of the room you are being moved into. Rejection asks what is wrong with you. Subtraction asks what will not fit through the next door. Those are not two moods. They are two entirely different mechanisms, and they leave two entirely different people standing at the end of the same event. Think about how a gardener works, not sentimentally, practically. In late winter, a gardener walks out to a fruit tree that has survived a hard year and cuts away branches that are still alive. Not dead branches, living ones, branches with buds on them, branches that would have produced something small and thin and disappointing. If that tree had a voice, that morning would feel exactly like betrayal. Nothing on that tree did anything wrong. The branch that is cut was doing precisely what a branch does, and yet it comes off because the gardener is not managing the branch. The gardener is managing what the whole tree is going to be able to carry in 8 months. Here is what I need you to notice. The tree cannot tell the difference between being cut and being attacked. It has no way to know. The only thing that separates a pruning from a mutilation is the intention of the hand holding the blade, and the tree has absolutely no access to that intention. You have been standing in a season of cutting and interpreting it as a season of attack, and I understand why. From inside the tree, they feel identical. But there is one thing that gives it away, and it is the thing you have been noticing without knowing it was evidence. A destructive cut is ragged. A pruning cut is clean. I want to name this because you are going to need it later, the clean cut. Watch how the endings in your recent life have actually behaved. When something is being torn away from you by an opposing force, it is loud, it is humiliating, it leaves splinters, and it makes you look bad in front of people whose opinion you need. It is designed to damage your reputation and your confidence at the same time. That is the ragged version, and you have lived through some of those, and you know the taste of them. But what has been happening recently is different, and you have felt the difference, even though you did not have language for it. People have not exploded out of your life. They have drifted. There was no scandal. There was no scene. Nobody had to choose sides. Nobody had to hear a version of the story. The relationship simply thinned, quietly, until it was more memory than practice. That is a clean cut. And a clean cut is not the signature of an enemy. An enemy has no interest in leaving you with your dignity intact. Chosen one, sit with that for a second, because it is important. Whoever has been closing these doors around you has been protecting your name while doing it. Nobody had to become the villain. Nobody had to be exposed. You were not humiliated. You were emptied, gently, in a way that left everybody able to speak well of everybody. Only heaven works like that. Bitterness does not have that kind of patience, and neither does human strategy. Let me put a face on this, because there is an old story that says it better than I can. There is a moment in the book of Ruth that almost everybody reads past. Naomi has lost everything and is going home, and she has 2 daughters-in-law standing on the road with her. She releases them both. She tells them to go back, to build lives, to stop carrying her ruin. And here is the part nobody preaches. Both of them wept. Both of them meant it. One of them, Orpah, kissed her and turned back. And scripture never says a single negative word about her. Not one. She is not the villain of that story. She is a woman who was released and who accepted the release. Ruth stayed, and Ruth ended up in the lineage of kings, and we know her name 3,000 years later. But the moment that made that possible was not a fight. It was a quiet parting on a road, with kissing and crying, and no cruelty in it at all. Somebody kissed you on that road. They meant it when they did, and they went back anyway. because they were released and you were not, and neither of you was told which was which. You have been trying to work out whether they were a good person or a false one. Wrong question. That question has been eating your evenings for months, and it has no answer, because both things were true. They loved you, and they were not going where you are going. Those two facts have been sitting in you like oil and water, and you have been shaking the bottle every night trying to get them to mix. They will not mix. Let them sit in the same container without mixing. That is what maturity actually is, and it is the end of a particular kind of exhaustion. Now I want to go somewhere gentler, because there is a wound underneath all of this that most people are never permitted to name. Chosen one, there is a kind of grief that never gets a funeral. I want to call it what it is: the grief with no funeral. When a person dies, an entire machinery activates around you. People bring food. Someone says a few words. There is a day where the world agrees to stop and acknowledge that something was lost. And afterwards, for months, people are gentle with you because there is a socially recognized reason for you to be fragile. But nobody brings food when a friendship of 15 years quietly stops. Nobody says a few words when the version of your family that used to gather at a certain table stops gathering. There is no ceremony when you finally admit to yourself that a dream you organized your 20s around is not going to happen. There is no acknowledged day. There is no permission to be fragile. You are expected to keep going to work, keep answering messages, keep being pleasant, while something enormous is quietly finishing inside you. And because there was no ceremony, part of you has decided the loss was not legitimate. That is why you have been apologizing for how you feel. That is why you keep saying it is not a big deal. Nothing happened. I am just tired. Something happened. It just happened without witnesses. So let me give you the thing that was withheld from you. In the authority of what I carry as somebody who has walked people through this more times than I can count, I want to say it plainly. What you lost was real. The grief is proportionate. You are not being dramatic. You are being accurate, possibly for the first time in a long while. I want you to put your hand somewhere on your body right now, wherever the tightness lives. For many of you, it is the middle of the chest. For some, it is the throat, and for some, it is a band across the shoulders that has been there so long you stopped calling it pain and started calling it your posture. Rest your hand there. Do not try to relax it. Just let your attention go there and stay for 3 breaths. That place has been carrying something with no name and no end date. It has been holding the position for a very long time because you never told it the event was over. Breathe once more and let this reach it. It is over. You are allowed to set it down. Nothing collapses if you set it down. Some of you just felt something move. That is not imagination. That is a body receiving permission it has been waiting years for. I want to tell you about a woman I know of, and I am going to keep her details vague because they are hers and not mine. She was in her early 50s. Her mother was still alive, still called every week, still remembered her birthday. And yet she came to a point where she had to admit that the mother she actually needed, the one who would have protected her when she was 9 years old, was never going to arrive. That woman did not exist and had never existed. There was no funeral for that. How do you grieve someone who is going to phone you on Sunday? She carried that with no ceremony for 30 years, and it came out sideways in every relationship she had. Not as sadness, as over-functioning. She was the one who organized everything, who noticed everything, who never needed anything. Because a child who learns that needing is dangerous grows into an adult who becomes indispensable so that nobody ever has the chance to leave. The day she finally said the words, out loud, in a room, that she was mourning someone who was still alive, is the day her body let go of an illness. The doctors had been managing for 11 years, without much success. I am not telling you that grief causes illness in some simple way, and I will not insult you with that. I am telling you that a body forced to hold a position for 3 decades will eventually ask for relief in the only language it has. Chosen one, hear this. You are permitted to mourn something that is not dead. You are permitted to mourn a person who still texts you. You are permitted to mourn the version of a relationship that existed before a certain year, even while the relationship technically continues. That is not disloyalty. That is honesty. And honesty is the only ground on which anything new gets built. And you are permitted to mourn a version of yourself, which is a thing almost nobody says out loud. Somewhere in the last few years, a version of you finished. The one who could stay up until 2 and be fine. The one who trusted immediately and completely. The one who believed a particular thing about how the world repays effort. That person did good work. That person got you here. And that person is not coming back. And part of the heaviness you have been carrying is that nobody ever told you it was allowed to be sad about that. It is allowed. Grieve them properly, then thank them, because they carried you across ground you could not have crossed as who you are now. Now let me show you the mechanism underneath all of this, because feelings are useful, but mechanisms are what set people free. Why does an unfinished ending consume so much more of you than a finished one? Because the mind treats an unfinished thing and a finished thing completely differently. A finished thing gets filed. An unfinished thing stays loaded, active, taking up capacity. And it does this whether or not you are consciously thinking about it. This is not a spiritual failing. It is closer to a rule of how attention works. Anything left open gets rehearsed. You have watched this happen in small ways. A song that stops halfway through a bar sits in your head all day. A conversation you were interrupted in comes back to you at midnight, fully formed with all the sentences you should have said. Your mind is not being sentimental. It is doing exactly what it is built to do, which is refuse to release an incomplete task. Now scale that up. A quiet subtraction is the largest incomplete task a human being can be handed. No last conversation, no stated reason, no agreement about what it was or why it stopped, which means your mind has been running that unfinished task continuously, in the background, for however long it has been, quietly consuming the exact resources you need for the new season. And this is the reason you have been so tired, in a way that rest does not touch. You have not been lazy, you have been running a process. You have been carrying an open file that nobody ever gave you the authority to close, and you have been carrying it while everybody around you thinks you are simply a bit quieter than you used to be. This is also the reason that pure willpower has not worked. You have told yourself to move on perhaps 1,000 times. You have deleted the number, or the photographs, or the whole account. And within days the process restarted, because the process is not obedient to your decisions. It is obedient to closure, and nobody gave you closure. So here is the shape of what remains in this message. We are not going to get you closure from them. They are not going to provide it, and waiting for them to is what has cost you the last chunk of your life. We are going to build the closure on this side, without their cooperation, and I am going to show you the two halves of how that is done. The first half is spiritual, and we are in the middle of it right now, and it is the work of agreeing with heaven about what has ended. The second half is not spiritual at all, and it is the half almost nobody talks about in a message like this, and it is the reason that question I asked you to hold is going to matter more than you currently expect. Chosen one, before we go there, I need to deal with something that has been sitting under your ribs since the first minute of this message, and if we leave it there, it will quietly undo everything else. You have been taking the silence personally, not the ending, the silence, the specific fact that nobody explained. That is the part that keeps returning at 3 in the morning, because to a heart that has been overlooked before, silence does not read as neutral. It reads as a statement. It reads as you were not worth the sentence. So let me tell you what silence actually indicates, and I want you to check it against your own life rather than take my word for it. Watch how endings get delivered to different kinds of people. Some people cannot be released quietly. If you close a door softly on them, they will pull it back open and demand to know why, and then they will call 4 people and build a version of the story where they were the wounded party. So those people get loud endings. They get scenes, exposures, public collapses. The ending has to be big enough that even they cannot argue with it. Then there are people who can be released with a sentence, and they take the sentence and they go. And then there is a third kind, the kind who can be released without a sentence at all, who feel the room change and adjust without being told, who will not chase, will not interrogate, will not make anybody responsible for their feelings. Who can look at a closed door and walk away with the door still on its hinges and the relationship still speakable of? Chosen one, that is who you have been. That is exactly why you have been getting quiet endings. Let me name it so you can carry it. The one trusted with silence. You have been reading your own restraint as invisibility. It is the opposite. Nobody gives a quiet ending to a person who cannot handle it. Quiet is what heaven uses on people it does not have to explain itself to twice. It is the same reason a general does not brief every soldier on the reason for a movement, but does brief the ones who are being moved forward. I know how that lands, because the flesh hears it and says, I would rather have been explained to. Of course you would. Everybody would. But look at what you actually did with the silence. You did not burn anything down. You did not send the message at midnight. You did not go through their friends. You sat in a room that was getting quieter, and you kept your hands still. Do you understand how rare that is? Do you have any idea how few people can be trusted with an unexplained ending? You have been treating your own maturity as evidence of your unimportance. Turn it over. Look at the other side. Your maturity is precisely why the process could be done gently, and the gentleness is precisely what let you keep your reputation, your peace, and your capacity to be in rooms with those people, again, without it being a whole event. That is not nothing. That is the entire difference between a person who arrives at the next season carrying baggage and a person who arrives carrying nothing but themselves. Now, I want to be very careful here, because there is a counterfeit of this that I have watched destroy people, and I would be failing you if I did not mark it. The counterfeit says that because you are the one who can be trusted with silence, you should also be the one who never says anything. That you should absorb every ending, swallow every unfairness, and call it spiritual maturity, while your inner life quietly turns to concrete. That is not what I am describing. Restraint and suppression look identical from the outside, and they are opposites on the inside. Here is the difference, and it is one clean test. Restraint is when you feel the whole thing, name it accurately, decide not to act on it, and are still able to describe it later in a level voice. Suppression is when you feel the whole thing, refuse to name it, decide not to act on it, and then cannot talk about it at all without either shutting down or shaking. If you can say out loud, "That hurt me and I chose not to chase it," you are practicing restraint and you are becoming free. If the only sentence available to you is "It was fine, it was nothing, I am over it," then something got buried alive, and it will come up later wearing a different face, usually as anger at somebody who did not deserve it, or as a body that stops cooperating. So I am not asking you to be silent inside. I am asking you to be quiet outside and extremely loud inside, in the place where you are honest with God and with yourself. Those two things together are what produce the person nobody can manipulate. Chosen one, I want to give you something practical now, because this next stretch of your life is going to require a decision you have not had to make before. At some point soon, and for some of you it has already started, one of these quiet doors is going to move. A name is going to appear on your phone that has not appeared in a long time. Or you are going to be in a place where you did not expect to see somebody, and there they are. Or an opportunity from an old season is going to reappear wearing slightly better clothes. And in that moment you are going to have about 4 seconds to decide something, and 4 seconds is not enough time to think. So we are going to decide now, while it is calm, what the rule is. I want to give you the test. I call it the echo test. When something from a closed season comes back, ask one question. Is this returning with something new, or is it returning with an echo? New means there is fresh material, a different offer, a changed person, and changed in a way you can point at, rather than a way you are hoping for. Something in the situation is genuinely not what it was. An echo means the same thing is being said again in a slightly warmer voice. Same promise, same shape, same conditions, just delivered at a moment when you happen to be more tired than you were the first time. Most returns are echoes. That is the whole difficulty. An echo is not a lie. It is a true sound arriving late with nothing behind it. And an echo is very hard to resist because it is made of your own voice and your own memories, and it sounds exactly like the thing you have been praying for. Test it by asking what would need to be true, not what you feel. What would need to be true in the actual world for this to be different this time? If you can name 3 concrete things that have changed, look at it properly. If you cannot name even one, and you find yourself explaining on their behalf, you are talking to an echo, and echoes cost more the second time because you already know how the story goes and you go anyway. That test is going to save some of you an entire year. And I want to say the harder half of it too, because a message that only tells you to keep doors shut is a message that will make you cold, and cold is not the goal. Sometimes the door reopens for real. Sometimes a person does the actual work, in silence, over a long stretch, and comes back different, and you will know, because they will not be asking you for access. They will be offering evidence and leaving the decision entirely with you. Manipulation always comes with pressure attached. Genuine return comes with patience attached, because a person who has really changed is not afraid of your timeline. So the rule is not never. The rule is never on the strength of an echo. Chosen one, I want to close this stretch by returning you to the ground under everything I have said so far, because I do not want you leaving here with techniques and no foundation. Everything in a quiet subtraction is designed to make you believe you are being reduced. Fewer people, fewer invitations, fewer conversations, less noise. And reduction to a human being feels like loss every single time, because we are built to count. But look at what actually gets built when things get quiet. Look at any life that eventually carried real weight, and you will find a period in it that looked from the outside like a person disappearing. Joseph in a cell for years with no letters. Moses on the backside of a desert with sheep at 80, with nothing at all going on. David in caves with a crown promised and a price on his head. Every single one of those seasons would photograph as failure. Not one of them was a punishment. All of them were a room being emptied so that something could be assembled in it that could not be assembled in a crowd. You are not being reduced. You are being cleared. And clearing always looks like loss, right up until the moment the new thing arrives and needs somewhere to stand. Chosen one, as we move deeper into this, I need you to let something settle that most people never get told, and it is going to answer a question you have carried since childhood. You have been assuming that the moments nobody witnessed did not count. Think about how much of your best behavior has happened with no audience. The times you were blamed for something and had the evidence in your hand and chose not to produce it, because producing it would have humiliated somebody in front of people. The times you covered for a person who never found out, you covered for them. The times you gave and then made sure it looked like an accident so nobody would feel indebted. And the goodbyes, especially the goodbyes. The times you let somebody leave believing their version of the story because correcting them would have cost them more than being misunderstood cost you. Every one of those moments had no witnesses, and a part of you, the part that keeps score even when you tell it not to, has quietly concluded that unwitnessed things do not exist. That is why you are tired. Not because you gave, because you believe you gave into nothing. I want to challenge that with everything I have. There is a strange line in the Psalms about God collecting tears in a bottle and writing them in a book. Read that plainly for a moment, without the poetry. It is describing an archive, not a feeling. An archive. Somebody is keeping records of things that had no observers. And notice what is being recorded. Not achievements, not visible successes. The most private, least impressive, most invisible thing a human being produces. Tears. The stuff that happens in cars, in car parks. The stuff that happens at 3 in the morning with the door shut so nobody hears. If that is what gets archived, then the accounting system you have been using your whole life is upside down. You have been assuming that the seen things count and the unseen things evaporate. The actual arrangement appears to be almost the reverse. Chosen one, hear this. Every quiet exit you handled with dignity is on record. Every time you did not make the scene you were entitled to make. Every time you carried an accusation for a week rather than defend yourself in a way that would have destroyed somebody. Every time you let a friendship end without ever telling the other people what really happened, you thought those were losses. They were deposits. And I want to be exact here, because the flesh will immediately try to turn this into a transaction, and it is not one. I am not telling you that heaven owes you a house because you were gracious. That is a small and insulting way to think about it, and it makes God into a vending machine. What I am telling you is that a person who behaves with integrity when nobody is watching is not producing nothing. They are producing themselves. Character does not appear at the moment of promotion. It is assembled quietly in exactly the situations where behaving badly would have cost you nothing. That is the actual return on those years, not a payment, a person, you. And that is why you can be trusted with what is coming, and why other people, louder people, people who never had to hold anything in silence, cannot. Now let me put a name on the wound in the middle of all this, because we have circled it enough, and it is time. There is a door in your life that you have knocked on and nobody answered. I want to call it the unanswered door. For some of you, it is a parent. You have been knocking on that door for 40 years. Every visit is a knock. Every phone call is a knock. Every achievement you announced slightly too casually was a knock. And the silence on the other side has been so consistent that you have built an entire personality around interpreting it. For some, it is a person you loved who never said the sentence. For some, it is a place of work, or a community, or a family that you served for years, while quietly waiting to be counted as one of them, and the counting never happened. And here is what an unanswered door does to a human being over time. It does not make you leave. That is the tragedy of it. If somebody had come to the door and said clearly, "You are not welcome here," you would have grieved and gone and built a life somewhere else. Instead, there was silence, and silence keeps hope alive at exactly the level required to keep you standing there. That is the cruelty of an unanswered door. It never rejects you, so you never leave. So I want to give you the sentence that people who get free eventually say, and it is not a bitter sentence, it is a quiet one. Nobody is home. Not, they hate me. Not, I was not good enough. Not, if I knock differently, with better timing, with more success behind me, with a nicer voice. Nobody is home. That house is empty. The person capable of opening that door does not live there and, for reasons that have almost nothing to do with you, may never have. Say it about your particular door and watch what happens in your chest. There is grief in it, and the grief is proper, and you should let it come. But underneath the grief there is something you have not felt in years, and it is relief. Because for the first time your effort is not being measured against a result that was never available. You did not fail to open that door. There was nobody on the other side of it to open. And chosen one. This is where the quiet subtraction stops being a loss and starts being a rescue. Because a person standing at an unanswered door cannot see what is directly behind them. I want you to picture something for a moment. Take your time. You are in a corridor, and you have been facing one particular door for a very long time. Your whole posture is organized around it. Your weight is forward. Your hand is up. Everything you know about yourself is defined in relation to whether that door opens. Now, without deciding anything about the door, simply turn around. Notice how bright the corridor is behind you. Notice how many doors there are. Notice that some of them have been open the entire time, and light has been coming out of them, and it has been falling on your back for years while you stared at the wood grain of the one that stayed shut. That is not a metaphor about opportunities. It is a description of what attention does. You cannot see anything you are not facing, and grief that has no ending point holds your face in one direction with a grip you did not consent to. Turn around. That is all. You do not have to walk anywhere yet. Just stop facing it. Now let me take you somewhere that is going to sound like a change of subject and is not. I want to talk about what actually happens on the other side of a quiet subtraction, because I do not want to leave you with peace about the past and nothing about the future. Within the coming season, there is a room you are going to walk into where you are already expected, and I want to describe it precisely, because vague promises are worthless and specific ones can be tested. It will not be a big room. This is the first thing that surprises people. You have been imagining a stage, or a crowd, or a moment of vindication in front of everybody who ever doubted you. That is not the shape of it. It is going to be small. 3 people. 4. A table, probably. Somebody will have made an effort with the food in a way that tells you they thought about it before you arrived. And the thing that is going to undo you is not going to be dramatic. It is going to be that somebody remembers something you said months earlier and brings it up correctly. That is it. That is the whole moment. You will be sitting there, and a person will refer to a detail from a conversation you assumed nobody was really listening to, and something in your chest is going to do something strange, and you are going to have to look at the table for a second, because it will be the first evidence in a very long time that you were being received rather than tolerated. And you will not have had to perform for it. You will not have had to be useful. You will not have earned it by organizing anything or fixing anything or being the strong one. That is the room. And you cannot get into that room carrying the previous season, not because of a rule, but because of a mechanism. You would walk in braced. You would spend the whole evening waiting for the moment it turns. You would be so busy protecting yourself that you would miss the fact that nothing was coming. The subtraction is not a punishment before that room. It is the preparation for it. You are being emptied so you can walk in with your hands open instead of your fists closed. Chosen one, let me give you something to do with all of this. Because insight without action turns into a nice feeling and then dissolves within about 2 days. You have not been given a ceremony, so you are going to hold one, yourself, deliberately. It will take about 10 minutes, and you can do it tonight. Take a piece of paper, actual paper, not a screen, because the hand knows things the thumb does not. At the top, write what ended. Not who did what, just what ended. A friendship, a version of a family, a chapter at a certain place, a picture of your future that you had been living inside. Underneath it, write 3 things that were genuinely good about it. This is the part people want to skip, and skipping it is why the ceremony fails. If you cannot find anything good, you are not grieving, you are prosecuting, and a prosecution never closes a folder. It appeals forever. Then write 1 thing you learned that you would not have learned otherwise. Not a lesson about their character, a lesson about yours. Then write the date it ended, as best you can. Guess if you have to. The guess is fine. The point is to place a marker where the world refused to place one. And then, and this is the part that matters, say out loud, alone, so that your ears hear your own voice. It is finished. I release it. I do not require an explanation in order to move. Then put the paper somewhere out of sight, or burn it if that is your temperament, and go to bed. I want to tell you what that does, and why it is not sentimental nonsense. You are giving your mind the 3 things it was denied: a timestamp, a summary, and a stated conclusion. Those are the exact 3 components a mind requires in order to file something away and stop rehearsing it. When somebody dies, the funeral supplies all 3. Nobody supplied them to you, so you are supplying them yourself. Some of you will do this and feel an enormous relief that same night. Some of you will do it and feel almost nothing, and then notice in about 10 days that a thought you used to have every morning has stopped arriving. And some of you, and I need to be completely straight with you here, will do everything I have just described exactly as I described it, and it will not hold. You will feel the release, and it will last 4 days, and then the whole thing will come back exactly as heavy as it was before, and you will conclude that you are broken or that your faith is not strong enough. I want to speak to that group specifically for a moment, because you are the reason I asked you to hold a question at the start of this message. You are not broken, your faith is not the problem, and I am going to explain, in a way you have almost certainly never heard from anyone standing where I am standing, exactly what is happening in your case. But before I do, I need to lay one more foundation, because without it, the answer will sound like a trick, and it is not a trick. It is the most practical thing in this entire message. So stay with me. What comes next is the part that changes what you do tomorrow, not just how you feel tonight. Chosen one, As we step into this next layer, let the weight of it settle properly, because I am about to describe the single most dangerous week of a quiet subtraction, and most people walk straight into it with their eyes open. The dangerous week is not the week it ends. You survive that one. The dangerous week is the one that comes about 2 months later, when the numbness lifts. While you are numb, you are protected. Numbness is a coat. It is not pleasant, but it is functional, and you can work and cook and hold conversations inside it. Then one ordinary morning it comes off, usually for no reason at all, and everything you did not feel at the time arrives at once, out of order, at full volume. And that is the morning you will reach for the phone. I want to tell you exactly what the reaching feels like from the inside, because if you can recognize it while it is happening, you can survive it. It does not feel like weakness. That is the thing. It arrives dressed as clarity. You will suddenly feel very calm and very reasonable, and you will think, actually, I have been overcomplicating this. It was probably a misunderstanding. A grown-up would simply reach out. It is not weak to reach out, it is mature. That sentence, "it is not weak to reach out," is the exact sound of a season restarting. Because here is what actually happens when you reach into a closed season from a place of ache rather than a place of fullness. You do not get the conversation you rehearsed. You get a polite version of it. They are kind, or they are brief, or they are warm, in a way that gives you almost enough to build another 6 weeks of hope on. And then nothing changes, and you are back at the door, knocking, with the additional weight of knowing you were the one who knocked. And you will have handed them something you cannot take back, which is the information that you are still available. I am not saying that to make you hard. I am saying it because I have watched people lose 2 years to a single message sent on a Tuesday morning when the numbness came off. So let us make the rule now, while you are calm, because you will not be calm that morning. When the ache arrives, you are permitted to feel every part of it. You are permitted to cry in the car. You are permitted to say their name out loud in an empty house. What you are not permitted to do is act on it for 7 days. 7 days. That is the whole rule. Not never. 7 days. Because the ache is a wave, and waves have a shape. If on day 7, with your body settled and your sleep normal, and nothing dramatic happening, you still believe reaching out is right, then reach out, and do it cleanly and without leverage. But 9 times out of 10, day 7 arrives, and the urgency has gone, and what is left is a memory you can hold, rather than a wound you must resolve. Chosen one, there is an old picture that says this better than any advice. There is a man called Lot in Genesis, whose family is being removed from a city that is finished, and the instruction given to them is almost absurdly simple. Do not look back. Do not go back. Do not look back. The prohibition is on the glance, and his wife looks, and something in her stops. Whatever you believe about the mechanics of that story, the shape of it is something you have watched happen to real people. Somebody gets out. Somebody actually gets out, physically out, and then spends the rest of their life turned around in the direction of the thing they left, and they become a monument instead of a person, present in body, fixed in place, still facing the old city. You know somebody like that. Possibly, you have been becoming somebody like that. The instruction was never do not grieve. It was do not organize your posture around what is behind you. Now let me give you the harder edge of this, because there is a version of looking back that hides very well inside spiritual language. Some people do not text, some people pray instead, and I want to be careful, because prayer is not the problem. But there is a kind of praying about a closed season that is really just knocking with better vocabulary. You are not asking for peace. You are asking for reversal every night for 3 years, and you have started calling that faithfulness. Test it honestly. When you finish praying about that person or that situation, are you lighter or are you more attached? Prayer that comes from surrender leaves you emptier. Prayer that comes from grip leaves you more entangled every time, and you can pray yourself into a decade that way. All of it sincere, all of it in the wrong direction. There is a way to pray about a closed thing that actually closes it. It sounds like this: I bring this to you, and I am not asking you to change their mind. I am asking you to change what I need. And if this is finished, help me stop asking for the version of my life that was cancelled. That is a hard prayer. It is also the only one I have ever seen work. Chosen one, I want to give you one more piece before we turn the corner in this message, and it is the piece that protects everything else. You are going to be tempted to make the subtraction mean something about people in general. That is the real danger. Not that you will chase one person, but that you will quietly sign a contract that says, this is what happens, this is what people do, and I will never again be as open as I was. That contract feels like wisdom. It is not wisdom, it is a cast. And a cast is appropriate for 6 weeks and catastrophic for 6 years, because a limb that stays in a cast after it has healed does not stay safe. It withers. You will know you have signed it when you notice yourself doing small, preemptive things, replying a bit later than you want to, keeping one foot near the door in every new friendship, making sure they always like you slightly more than you like them, because whoever cares less cannot be destroyed. You did not decide to do those things. They installed themselves, and they will quietly guarantee that the next season is populated entirely by people who never quite reach you, which will then prove the contract right, which is how a wound becomes a prophecy. So here is the assignment, and it is uncomfortable. In the next fortnight, in one low-risk situation, do the opposite. Reply immediately when you feel like replying immediately. Say the warm thing without waiting to see if they say it first. Let somebody see that you were glad to hear from them. You are not being naive. You are proving to your own nervous system that openness and destruction are not the same event, and that is the only way that belief ever gets rewritten. Not by deciding, by evidence. Now I want to close the loop that has been open since the beginning of this message, because I told you there was something found in research laboratories that I would come back to, and I want to explain why I waited until this exact point to bring it forward. Because what they found is not information. What they found is a solution, and a solution is useless and frankly insulting until a person understands the full shape of the problem it solves. You now understand the shape. You understand that a quiet ending leaves an unfinished task. You understand that an unfinished task runs continuously in the background and consumes the exact capacity you need for the next season. You understand that willpower cannot close it, because closure is not a decision, and that a ceremony helps enormously, but that for a certain group of people, it does not hold. That group is not a small group, and the reason it does not hold for them has nothing to do with their faith, their discipline, or their sincerity. It has to do with the equipment. Chosen one, before I take you into that, there is one more thing about timing that you need, because it changes how urgent any of this is. There are 2 different words for time in the language the New Testament was written in, and the difference between them is the difference between a life that moves and a life that waits. The first is chronos, that is clock time, sequence. Tuesday follows Monday. Chronos is what your calendar measures and what your bills are organized around, and chronos is completely indifferent to you. It does not speed up when you are ready, and it does not slow down when you are not. The second is kairos. Kairos does not mean a duration. It means an opening, a moment shaped in such a way that a particular action is possible in it that is not possible on either side of it. In the old world, it was the word used for the gap in a weaving loom that the shuttle passes through, and for the exact instant an archer releases, and for the narrow window when a ship can leave harbor before the weather turns. Here is why that matters to you tonight. Almost everything you have been waiting for has been waiting on chronos in your imagination and on kairos in reality. You have been thinking, when I am stronger, when this settles, when I have more clarity, next year. And chronos will happily give you next year and the one after it, because chronos has an unlimited supply and no interest in whether you use any of it. Kairos does not work that way. A kairos window is not punishment, and it is not a threat. And I want to be careful here, because this is where people manipulate audiences, and I will not do that to you. Nobody can tell you that a door closes on a date, but anybody who has lived long enough can tell you that there are periods when a person is unusually able to change, and that those periods do not stay open indefinitely. Because the softness that makes change possible hardens over time on its own, and a quiet subtraction produces exactly that softness. That is the thing almost nobody sees. Grief makes a person temporarily honest. All the usual defenses are too tired to operate. The stories you normally tell yourself about why your life is arranged the way it is do not have their normal strength. For a stretch of weeks, sometimes a few months, you can actually see your own life clearly, which is not something you can do at will. You are in that window right now. That is precisely why this message found you, and precisely why it is landing rather than sliding off. And you can feel it landing, which is itself the evidence. The danger is not that God removes the opportunity. The danger is that the softness closes over, that the ache becomes routine, that you get used to the quieter house and the smaller circle and the flatter week, and eventually you stop calling it grief and start calling it your life. That is how a season becomes a personality. So when I say that this is the moment, I am not putting a countdown on heaven. I am telling you something about your own tissue. You are open right now in a way that you will not be open in 6 months if nothing is done with it. Chosen one, now let me give you the mechanism, and I want you to follow this carefully because it is the piece almost nobody has ever explained to you. Why can a person understand something perfectly and still not be changed by it? You have lived this. You have had evenings where everything clicked, where you saw the whole pattern, saw exactly what you had been doing, felt the relief of finally understanding, went to bed genuinely different, and within 9 days you were behaving exactly as before, with the added humiliation of knowing better. That gap between understanding and change is the most expensive gap in a human life, and almost every self-improvement effort ever attempted has died in it. Here is what is actually happening in that gap. Understanding is one operation. Integration is a completely different operation. Understanding happens in the part of you that handles language, sequence, logic, and explanation. It builds a model. It is very good at producing the sentence, "I know what my problem is." Integration happens somewhere else entirely. It happens in the part of you that handles image, feeling, meaning, body sense, and the recognition of patterns you cannot put into words. That is the part that decides what is safe. That is the part that actually runs your behavior when you are tired or triggered or at 3 in the morning. And in most adults, those two parts are barely speaking to each other. You have felt this as a specific, maddening experience. You know intellectually that the door is closed. You know it with total clarity. You could write an essay on it. And something underneath refuses to accept it. And every night that something restarts the same process, and no amount of knowing makes any difference at all. That is not a spiritual failure. That is 2 halves of a system operating independently. And that is exactly why the ceremony I gave you works magnificently for some people and slides off others. If your 2 halves are reasonably in touch, the ceremony passes the message across and the file closes. If they are not, the ceremony is received by the half that already agreed and never reaches the half that is actually running the loop. You have been trying to close a folder from a keyboard that is not connected to the machine. Chosen one, I want you to sit with how much of your life that explains. The resolutions that did not survive February, the forgiveness you gave sincerely and had to give again the next month, the peace that lasted 4 days. You were never lying, you were never weak, you were sending a signal across a gap. Now here is where this stops being an explanation and becomes a question. And the question is the whole reason we are still here. If the gap is the problem, is the gap fixed? Is a person simply built one way or the other, and the rest of us have to spend our lives compensating for equipment that will not cooperate? Because if that is true, then everything I have told you tonight is a beautiful description of a cage. But here is what most messages like this never say. Everything you have learned so far tonight is true, and without what comes next, it will operate at a fraction of its capacity. There is something underneath all of it that you have not looked at, and it is not in your mind, and it is not in your heart. It is in something far more ordinary than either, and far easier to reach. Let me say all of this once, in plain language, with no images at all, so that you can hold the whole thing in one hand. Something in your life ended without a ceremony. Because there was no ceremony, no timestamp, and no explanation, your mind never filed it. Because it never filed it, it has been rehearsing it continuously in the background, every day, using capacity you needed elsewhere. That is why you are tired in a way sleep does not fix, why new opportunities feel like effort, and why you cannot seem to fully arrive anywhere. The way out is closure. Closure is not a feeling and it is not a decision, so you cannot will it. Closure happens when the analytical half of you and the meaning-making half of you reach the same conclusion at the same time. When they do, the file closes and stays closed. When they do not, the file reopens every night, no matter what you told yourself. So the real question of this entire message is not whether you can let go. You have been trying to let go for a long time, and you have plenty of willingness. The real question is whether the two halves of you can be brought back into working contact. And that is not a spiritual question at all. That is a physiological one. You now know exactly what has been blocking you. The only question left is what you do with that knowledge tonight, while you are still soft enough to use it. Chosen one. In 1981, a scientist named Dr. Roger Sperry received the Nobel Prize. Not for a theory about spirituality, for something far stranger and more practical. He had spent years studying what happens when the two halves of the human brain are separated from each other, and what he demonstrated changed the understanding of the human mind permanently. The two halves are not duplicates, and they are not a backup system. They are specialists. One handles language, logic, and sequence. The other handles image, meaning, pattern, and the sense of the whole. And they were designed to run as one instrument, constantly synchronized, thousands of times a minute. When they run in synchrony, something happens that researchers describe as whole brain activation. It is the state that people are describing when they talk about a moment where an answer simply arrived, where a decision that had been impossible for months became obvious in an afternoon, where they felt, for a period of hours or days, completely themselves. Here is the part that will make you angry, and I think it should. In studies of young children, something close to 98% of them test at a level of creative capacity that is classified as genius. Follow the same population into adulthood, and fewer than 1 in 1,000 still measures there. Nothing was wrong with those children. Something was gradually done to all of them, by the shape of modern life, by an education system built for one half of the brain, by decades of screens and noise and fragmented attention. The synchronization degraded. Slowly, invisibly, with no announcement. Chosen one, hold that against everything we have discussed tonight. The thing that was taken from you was not taken by the person who walked away quietly. Something far more important was taken much earlier, and it was taken at a level so far beneath your awareness that you have spent your adult life blaming your character for it. You are not undisciplined. You are not weak in faith. You are operating an instrument that has been running out of synchrony for 30 years and then judging yourself for the results. There is a physician in New York, a neurologist named Dr. Daniel Barone, who has spent the better part of 2 decades on exactly this question, not on whether the synchrony can be lost. That was settled long ago. On whether it can be restored in an ordinary adult, without machines, without a clinic, and without years of training. Before I tell you what he built, I want to tell you about 2 people. The first is a woman in California, a nurse, who described her life in a sentence that I have never forgotten. She said that life had stopped happening with her and started happening to her. She was competent, she was needed, she was exhausted, and she had the constant sense that she was reacting to her own existence rather than living it. Within a few weeks of doing one small thing every day, she described something she found difficult to explain. Not that circumstances changed, that she was present for them. She said she felt like the person who used to be in charge of her life had come back into the room. The second is a man in Texas who ran a small online business and had been stuck for 2 years on a decision he could not make. He could argue every side of it perfectly and could not move. What he described afterwards was not a burst of energy. It was that the decision made itself in about 10 minutes on a Thursday, and he could not understand why it had ever been complicated. Different people, different lives, same reported experience. Something that had been split came back together. What Dr. Barone developed is an 8-minute audio sequence. You put on headphones, you close your eyes, and you listen. That is the entire protocol. You do not meditate. You do not repeat anything. You do not visualize or journal or hold an intention. It works underneath your awareness, which is precisely the level at which the problem lives. They call it the genius switch. The technology behind it is called neural sync, and it is not a soundtrack, and it is not relaxation audio. It is a targeted auditory sequence built to re-establish communication between the two halves that Dr. Sperry proved were designed to work as one. And I want to be precise about why this matters for you specifically tonight, because I am not offering you a general wellness product. I am pointing at the exact mechanism. The reason your closure does not hold is that the two halves of you are not reaching the same conclusion at the same time. Whole brain activation is the name for the condition in which they do. The genius switch is not for everyone. It is for the person who has been carrying an unfinished ending, who has done all the spiritual work honestly, who has prayed and released and written the letter and meant every word of it, and who is quietly humiliated by the fact that it keeps coming back. If that is not you, this is not for you, and you should let it pass. Dr. Barone was told by colleagues that 8 minutes a day capable of doing that would be an incredible value at $500, and given what a single hour of clinical neurofeedback costs, that is not an exaggeration. It was listed at $49. On the page where this is offered, it is $39, and that is not a promotional gesture. It is simply where it currently sits, and it may not stay there. It comes with 4 things alongside it, including a guided visualization from one of the most highly rated creators in that field, a 100-year-old book on the origin of nearly every modern manifestation practice, and a practical guide that has saved people real money on ordinary shopping. And it carries a complete money-back guarantee, not a partial one and not a conditional one. If you listen to it every day and nothing shifts, you write to them and you are refunded, having kept everything. That arrangement only exists when somebody is unusually confident about what happens in the first fortnight. There is one thing I would ask you to be careful about. Because of how this has spread, there are imitations of it circulating. Sequences that sound similar and were built by people who have never read the underlying research. The real one comes from one place only. The link is in the description below and in the pinned comment underneath this message. And if your spirit is not settled about it, do not go there. This has to be a quiet yes or nothing at all. Chosen one, I want to step back from that entirely for a moment, because I never want the practical thing to sit where the sacred thing belongs. I have watched people restore that synchrony and use it to build something beautiful. And I have watched people restore it and use it to become faster at the same life that was already hollowing them out. A sharper instrument in an unexamined life simply produces sharper mistakes. Everything we said tonight about the last ordinary day, about the unanswered door, about releasing what has already been released, matters more than any tool, and it would matter if the tool did not exist. The tool does not do the letting go. You do the letting go. It simply removes the reason your letting go has not been holding. Chosen one, as we move into this next unfolding, let your spirit recognize what is actually being asked of you, because we have arrived at the largest goodbye in this message, and it is not the one you came here for. You came here thinking about a person, or a friendship, or a season at a certain address, and all of that was real, and we have honored it properly. But the biggest goodbye coming to your life is not to any of them. It is to a version of you. I want to introduce you to that version carefully, because they deserve respect and most people skip straight to trying to kill them off. That version of you is the one who explains, who has spent an enormous portion of their adult life making sure they were understood correctly, who cannot leave a slightly wrong impression alone, who replays conversations searching for the sentence that came out badly, and who has, more than once, sent a follow-up message at 11 at night to clarify something nobody else remembered. That version is the one who keeps proving, who cannot simply be somewhere, who has to be useful in the room, has to contribute something, has to justify the chair, who is superb in a crisis and slightly lost at a dinner where nothing is required of them. That version is the one who holds the door open long after everybody has left the building, who keeps a place set, who says they might come back, and who has arranged an entire interior life around not being the one who gave up. Now hear me. That version of you is not a flaw. Do not stand over them with contempt. That person was built for a reason, and the reason was survival. Somewhere early, in a house or a school or a family, being understood correctly was genuinely the difference between safety and danger. Being useful was how you earned a place. Holding the door was how you avoided the unbearable feeling of having been the one who let go. That version of you took a real threat and built real armor, and the armor worked. You are here. You made it out of rooms that would have kept other people. But the assignment in front of you now cannot be carried in armor. That is the whole difficulty. Because the room I described to you earlier, the small one, the table, the person who remembers what you said, is not a room you can enter while explaining yourself. You cannot receive warmth while auditioning. The two are physically incompatible. Somebody offering you affection and somebody being asked to evaluate your performance cannot occupy the same chair. So this is the goodbye, not to a person who wronged you, to the version of you that was built for a world you no longer live in. And this goodbye is quiet too. That is the part almost nobody prepares you for. There is no ceremony for this either. Nobody notices the day you stop explaining. It looks like nothing from the outside. Somebody misreads you, and you feel the whole familiar machinery start up in your chest. The drafting, the rehearsing, the urge to fix the impression, and you simply do not act on it. And nothing happens. The world does not end. They go on with a slightly incorrect picture of you, and you go on with your evening intact. That is the whole event. That is what the largest goodbye of your life looks like from the outside. Nothing. Chosen one. I want to give this version of you a proper farewell, because they earned one, and they will not get one anywhere else. Say it inside yourself, in whatever words are true for you. Something like this. You kept me alive. You watched every door and read every face, and you were right often enough that I trusted you completely. You made me useful when useful was the only currency I had. You held on when holding on was the only loyalty available to me. And I am not going where you can come. Not because you failed, because the danger you were built for is behind us, and you have started guarding me from things that are not threats. Thank you. I am setting you down. Some of you just felt something loosen across your shoulders, and you do not know why. That is 30 years of vigilance being told, for the first time, that it may rest. Now let me show you who is standing behind them, because a goodbye without an arrival is just a loss, and I will not leave you there. The version of you that comes next is not louder. This surprises people. You have been imagining that the transformed version of you is more impressive, more confident, more visibly successful, and that is not the shape of it at all. The version of you that comes next is slower. There is a pause in them that did not used to be there. Somebody says something slightly provocative at a table, and instead of the immediate internal scramble, there is a gap, a full second, where nothing happens. And in that second, they decide, rather than react. They are unhurried in conversation. They ask a question and then genuinely wait, without preparing their own next sentence, while the other person is still speaking. People find them strangely restful and cannot work out why. They are able to be liked without needing it. That is the real marker. They can walk into a room, enjoy the people, contribute something, and walk out without conducting a review in the car. And here is the thing that will surprise you most about them. They are far warmer than the version of you that came before. Everybody assumes that letting go of the need for approval makes a person cooler and more distant. The reverse happens. When you no longer need something from people, you can finally be generous with them, because generosity that has an invoice attached is not generosity, and everybody can feel the invoice. Let me place you inside a specific day, so this is not abstract. It is an ordinary morning some months from now. You wake before the alarm, not from anxiety, just awake. And you notice, lying there, that the first thought of the day was not about them. Not because you forced it, because the process finally stopped running, and the space where it used to run is simply quiet. You make something to eat. You are not performing wellness. You are just standing in a kitchen. Your phone is somewhere else in the flat, and you have not thought about it. Somebody sends you something that would have taken a week off your life 2 years ago, and you read it, and you feel the old shape of the reaction arrive, and it passes through you like weather. You answer it in one sentence, correctly, without cruelty, and without over-explaining. Then you put it down and go on with the morning. That evening you are in a room with 3 or 4 people, and one of them refers to something you said months ago, accurately, and something in your chest does that strange thing, and you look at the table for a second. And this time, you do not deflect it with a joke. You let it land, you say thank you, and you mean it, and it is not uncomfortable. That is not a fantasy. That is what happens to a person whose background process finally stops. Not a different life, the same life, with the tax removed. Chosen one, I want to be exact about one thing before we go further, because I refuse to let this become a promise I cannot keep. I am not telling you that in 21 days everything will be restored, and I am not telling you a date on which the person will return or the door will open, and anybody who does tell you that is selling you something worse than a product. They are selling you a calendar you will destroy yourself waiting for. What I am telling you is what can begin within the coming days. The compulsion to explain yourself can begin to lose its authority over you. The reflex to check for a message can begin to feel less like a need and more like a habit you are watching. The heaviness that has been sitting behind your ribs since the last ordinary day can begin to become something you carry rather than something that carries you. That is not a small promise. That is the only kind of promise that has ever been true. Chosen one, as we continue into this next layer, I want to hand you something you can hold in your hands, because we have done a great deal of seeing and now we need to do some building. There is a Hebrew word you have heard your whole life, and almost certainly heard translated badly. The word is shalom, and every English Bible renders it as peace, and peace in English has come to mean the absence of conflict, a quiet house, nobody arguing. That is not what the word carries. Shalom describes a state in which nothing is missing and nothing is broken. It is a word about completeness, about a thing being fully assembled and all of its parts present and functioning together. Sit with the size of that for a moment. What you have been asking for all these months, when you have asked for peace, is not what you actually needed. You have been asking for the noise to stop. What your spirit has been reaching for is something entirely different, nothing missing, nothing broken. And now look at what a quiet subtraction does to a person in that light. It does not take your peace in the English sense. Your house is quieter than it has ever been. That is precisely the problem. What it takes is the other thing. It leaves you with a sense that a piece is absent and cannot be replaced, and the mind cannot rest in a structure it believes is incomplete. That is why silence has not felt restful to you. You have had quiet in abundance and no shalom at all. So here is the first tool, and it is designed exactly for that gap. I want to give you what I call the unsent letter, and I want to be specific about how it is done, because almost everybody does it wrong, and the wrong version makes things worse. The wrong version is where you write everything you wish you could say to them, all the grievances, all the questions, all the ways they failed you. People do this, they feel enormous for an hour, and then they feel worse for a fortnight, and the reason is simple. That letter is still addressed to them. It still requires them to receive it in order to complete. You have not closed the loop. You have made it more vivid. Here is the right version. You write the letter as though it is already 10 years from now, and you are writing to yourself as you are tonight. Start it with, I know what you are carrying right now. Then write, from that future position, what you now understand about this season that you could not possibly understand while inside it. Not a fantasy about how it all worked out, something more sober than that. What the season was actually for, what it removed, what it made possible, what you eventually stopped needing. Then finish it with one sentence of instruction from the older version of you to tonight. One sentence only. Now here is why this works when the other version does not. You are not asking anybody for closure. You are generating a completed narrative from the only person who has authority to complete it, which is you. A mind cannot file a story with no ending, so you supply the ending. And because it comes in your own voice, from your own future, both halves of you can hear it, which is more than can be said for most advice you have ever been given. Keep the letter. Put it somewhere you will find it in a year by accident. That accidental finding is part of the mechanism. Chosen one. Here is the second tool, and this one is for the specific misery of the next few weeks. I want you to notice that grief is not one thing. It arrives in about 4 different costumes, and most people treat them all the same way and get nowhere. There is the wave. That is when it comes without warning, in a supermarket, because of a song or a smell or somebody with the same walk. The wave requires nothing from you except that you stop resisting it. It lasts about 90 seconds if you let it, and about 4 days if you fight it. When the wave comes, breathe. Let your eyes do what they want to do, and continue with your afternoon. There is the ache. That is the low, constant background version, and it is not a crisis. The ache does not want to be solved. It wants company. That is the one for a walk, or a long shower, or a phone call to somebody who does not need you to be all right. There is the loop. That is the thinking one. The circling, the rehearsing, the conversations at 3 in the morning with somebody who is not there. And the loop is the only one of the 4 that must not be indulged, because the loop is a machine that runs on attention and starves without it. When you catch yourself in the loop, you do not reason with it. You move your body, you stand up, you go outside, you do something with your hands. The loop cannot survive a change of physical state. And then there is the flare. That is the one that comes out as anger, usually at somebody entirely innocent, usually about something small, usually about 10 weeks after the actual event. So it converted. When you feel a flare, do not act on it and do not shame yourself for it. Ask one question. What am I actually sad about? 4 costumes, 1 event. And you have been treating all 4 as though they mean you are not healing. None of them mean that. Together, they are what healing looks like from the inside. Healing is not a smooth downward slope. It is a jagged line that trends in one direction over months. Chosen one. I want to tell you about somebody, and I am keeping the details loose on purpose. There was a man in his 60s who spent 31 years running a business he built from nothing. He knew every person in it by name, and he knew the names of most of their children. He sold it in his late 50s for a good amount of money to people who were kind and competent and who did all the correct things. Within 18 months, everybody he had worked beside for 3 decades had stopped contacting him. Nobody fell out with him. There was no incident. The calls simply thinned. He was invited to a leaving party and then to nothing. And he said something to me that I have carried ever since. He said, I thought I had friends, and it turns out I had a context. Now, the ordinary way to hear that is as a tragedy, and there is real loss in it, and I will not minimize it. But watch what happened next, because this is the whole point. For about 2 years, he was quietly devastated, and he told almost nobody. Because how do you explain to your wife that you are grieving people who are all still alive and all still in the same town? And then, somewhere in the 3rd year, he started doing something he had wanted to do since he was 19 and had never once had time for. Something small, something with his hands. And within 4 years, he had a completely different circle of people, none of whom needed anything from him, none of whom had ever seen him in a suit, and not one of whom would have entered his life while the old one was still occupying the space. He said the sentence that I want to hand to you tonight. He said, "They did not leave me. They finished." There is an enormous difference between a person who abandons you and a person who finishes. Some people are in your life for a defined piece of work, and when the work is done, there is nothing left holding them, and no amount of affection on either side changes that. It is not betrayal, it is completion. And completion is only tragic if you believe the arrangement was permanent, which nobody ever told you it was. You assumed it. Everybody assumes it. The people who finish are not lesser people. Some of them loved you genuinely. The finishing does not reach back and make it false, exactly the same way an ending does not reach back and delete a thing. Chosen one, let us rest here for a moment. We have covered a great deal of ground, and you have been holding a lot. Wherever you are, whatever you were doing before this message found you, just be there for a second without doing anything with it. You do not have to apply anything I have said. You do not have to fix anything tonight. Nothing is required of you in this exact minute. If your shoulders are up near your ears, let them come down. If you have been holding your jaw, let it be loose. Take one breath that is slightly deeper than the one before it, and let it go without managing it. There, that is all. I want to say something in that quiet, because the quiet is the right place for it. You have carried more than people know, not dramatically, quietly, which is harder, because dramatic suffering at least gets acknowledged. You have got up on mornings when there was no reason to, and gone and done ordinary things well. You have been kind to people who had no idea you were struggling. You have kept promises that nobody was checking. Nobody clapped for any of that. And it counted anyway. Chosen one, now I want to deal directly with the objections that have been rising in you, because I know they are there, and if I leave them unanswered, they will quietly close everything we have opened. Some of you have been thinking, this is all very well, but my situation is different, because the person did not drift. They are still here, and it is worse because I have to see them. You are right that it is a different shape, and you are wrong that it changes the mechanism. A relationship can end while the two people remain in the same building. That is a quiet subtraction with the additional cruelty of proximity, and everything I have described applies with more force, not less. The last ordinary day still happened. The file is still open. The ceremony still works. You are simply grieving somebody you will pass in a hallway, which is why you have never allowed yourself to grieve at all. Some of you have been thinking, I have already done all of this, years of it. Therapy, prayer, journals, retreats, forgiveness exercises, and you are quietly furious that somebody is describing the problem again as though you have not been working on it. Hear me carefully. Your effort was not wasted, and it was not insufficient. You are the exact person I described earlier. You have been sending a completed message across a gap, and it has not been arriving, and the reason has nothing to do with the quality of your work. A person who has done 10 years of sincere inner work and still cannot close a loop does not need more inner work. They need the connection restored. That is a different category of problem, and it is the reason this message has been going where it has been going. Some of you have been thinking, but what if I am wrong? What if it is not over? What if I let go and then they come back and I have wasted the grief? Then you will have grieved something that returned, and you will discover that grieving properly did not disqualify you from receiving it. Nothing in what I have described burns a bridge. There is no message sent. There is no announcement. Everything I have given you happens entirely on your side, in private. And if that door genuinely reopens, you will walk through it lighter than you would have. And some of you, and this is the quiet one, have been thinking, this is a good message, but it is for other people, the ones who are further along, the ones who deserve a next season. You have been listening in the third person for over an hour. I want to interrupt that directly. There is a specific reason you have been hearing this at a distance, and it is not humility. Somewhere along the line you accepted the idea that you have to be well before you are worth restoring. That is exactly backwards, and it has cost you years. Nothing in the record shows anybody being repaired before they were chosen. The choosing comes first, always, and the repair is what follows it. You are not auditioning for a season. You are already in one. Nanthaus, chosen one. As we move into this next unfolding, let your spirit widen, because everything we have said so far has been about you, and now it has to become larger than you. There is something in a family that moves the way water moves through a house. It finds the same channels. It arrives in the same rooms. And nobody in the house chose it or designed it. They simply inherited the plumbing. I want you to look at the goodbyes in the generation above you. Somewhere behind you there is a person who lost something and never grieved it, because grieving was not available in that world. There was work to be done. There were children in the house. There was a war, or a farm, or a factory, or simply a culture in which a person did not sit down and feel things at length. So, the ending went unprocessed, and an unprocessed ending does not disappear. It converts. It turns into a temperament. It turns into a house where nobody discusses anything difficult. It turns into a father who was present at every meal and absent from every conversation. It turns into a mother whose warmth arrived reliably at breakfast and vanished the instant anybody needed something from her that could not be cooked or cleaned. You did not receive a set of rules from those people. Rules would have been easier, because rules can be argued with. You received a climate, and a climate is invisible from inside. And here is the thing I want you to see tonight, because it reframes your entire situation. The way you have been handling this quiet ending is not entirely your own invention. Some of it is 30 years old. Some of it is 130 years old. The instinct to go silent, to absorb, to become useful, to never be the one who mentions the thing everybody knows, was in the walls before you arrived. That is not an excuse. It is not a life sentence either. It is simply information, and information is what breaks a pattern. Because here is what happens when one person in a line does the thing that nobody in that line has ever done. When one person names what ended, grieves it properly, refuses to convert it into a temperament, and comes out the other side still warm, everything downstream changes. Not through a speech. You will never sit anybody down and explain what you did. It moves in a different way, entirely. A child in your house, or a niece, or a young person who watches you from a distance, sees an adult experience a real loss, and neither collapse nor go cold. And something gets installed in them that could not be taught with words, which is the knowledge that endings are survivable without becoming somebody smaller. That is what is actually being purchased with these months, not your comfort, the plumbing of a house you may never see finished. Chosen one. There is a moment in the story of Nehemiah that people quote for the wrong reasons. He is rebuilding a wall, and people are shouting at him from below to come down and have a conversation, and he sends back one sentence: "I am doing a great work, and I cannot come down." The way that gets preached, it sounds like a man dismissing his enemies. Read it again. It is a man who understood something about attention. He does not say the conversation is unimportant. He does not say those people are worthless. He says he cannot come down, because coming down is the mechanism by which the wall stops being built. Not the argument itself, the descent. Every unanswered door, every open loop, every 3 a.m. conversation with somebody who is not there is a voice from below asking you to come down. And it will always sound reasonable. It will sound like fairness, like unfinished business, like something a decent person would address. You are building something, you cannot come down. That is the entire discipline of this season, and it is not coldness. Nehemiah went back to those people eventually, in his own time, from the top of a finished wall, which is an entirely different conversation than the one they were demanding at ground level. Chosen one, I want to widen this one final turn, and then we will come back down to where you are sitting. There is a way of reading your life, in which everything that has happened is a series of things that happened to you. People arrived, people left, circumstances did what circumstances do. And in that reading, you are essentially weather. Things blow through you. There is another way of reading the same set of facts. In that reading, the subtractions in your life are not random, and they are not punishments. They are the shape of a preparation. Every removal makes a particular kind of room, and the rooms being made in you over these last 2 years are unusually specific. You are being made into somebody who can hold a difficult thing without leaking it onto everybody around them. You are being made into somebody who does not need to be understood in order to remain steady. You are being made into somebody who can sit with a person in pain and not need to fix it, because you have finally learned that presence is worth more than solutions. Do you know how rare that person is? Do you know how many people are quietly looking for exactly one human being like that and cannot find one anywhere? There is a version of the coming years in which you are that person for somebody, not professionally, not with a title. Somebody in an ordinary life will hit the exact ending you have been living through, and they will look around at everybody they know, and their eyes will stop on you, not because you are wise, because you have the particular quality that only comes from having been through something without a witness and having survived it without going cold. And in that moment, everything you are living through tonight becomes currency, not metaphorically. Actually, you will be able to say the sentence that nobody was able to say to you, and you will be able to say it with authority because you will not be guessing. That is not a consolation prize. That is one of the few things in a human life that genuinely cannot be bought, borrowed, or shortcut. It only comes one way, and you are in the middle of paying for it. Chosen one, come back down with me now, because I want this to land somewhere practical before we finish. I know what tomorrow morning looks like for many of you. The message will have been beautiful, and tomorrow at 11 the ordinary heaviness will come back, and there will be a moment where all of this feels like something you listened to, rather than something that happened to you. So let me give you the smallest possible thing, because small things survive contact with real life and large resolutions do not. Tomorrow, once, when the loop starts, I want you to say 4 words out loud, not in your head, out loud, even in a whisper, even in a car. That one is finished. That is all. You are not resolving anything. You are not forgiving anybody. You are simply refusing to reopen the file for the 800th time. Say it, and then move your body, and then continue with your day. Do that once a day for 2 weeks, and you will notice something around the 10th or 11th day. Not peace, exactly. Quiet. The specific quiet of a room where a machine that had been humming so long you stopped hearing it has finally been switched off. And if you do that faithfully for 2 weeks and the humming does not stop, then you already know what I would say to you, because we spent a long time on it earlier, and I meant every word of it. The problem is not your sincerity. There is a connection that needs restoring, and 8 minutes with your eyes closed is a small thing to try against 30 years of interference. The link sits in the description and in the pinned comment, quietly, for whoever it belongs to. That is the last time I will mention it, and the rest of what remains here belongs entirely to something else. Chosen one, there is something I have been holding back for the whole of this message, and we have finally arrived at the place where you are able to hear it. Everything I have told you tonight is true. The subtraction is real. The clean cut is real. The room being emptied so that something can be assembled in it is real. And I would say all of it again. But there is one more turn, and it is the one that changes the meaning of every other thing we have discussed. You have been assuming this entire time that the goodbye is happening to you, that people are leaving your life, that doors are closing around you, that you are the one standing still in a corridor while things are removed from either side of you, and that your job is to accept it gracefully. That is not what has been happening. Chosen one, you are the one who has been moving. Nothing has left. Nothing was taken. You have been traveling, slowly, for about 2 years, in a direction you did not consciously choose. And what you have been experiencing as people withdrawing is the ordinary experience of distance opening between a person who is moving and people who are standing still. Think about what that actually explains. It explains why there was no argument. Nobody has to argue when nobody has done anything. There was no betrayal because there was no event. There was only a widening gap, and gaps are silent by nature. It explains why nobody could tell you the reason. They did not know the reason. From where they were standing, you simply became slightly harder to reach, slightly less available for the old conversation, slightly less interested in the things that used to hold the whole thing together. They did not decide anything about you. They noticed something they could not name, and they adjusted, the way people do. It explains why every attempt to fix it failed. You have been trying to close a distance by explaining yourself, and you cannot explain your way back to a position you have already left. The words arrive from the new location, no matter how carefully you choose them. And it explains the strangest part, the part that has been quietly disturbing you, and that you have not admitted to anybody. There have been moments, brief ones, that you felt guilty about immediately, where the quiet was a relief, where you noticed you were not dreading a particular phone call anymore, where you realized you had not thought about a certain person in 9 days, and something in you was lighter rather than sadder. You thought that made you cold. It does not make you cold. It is the sensation of a body that has stopped carrying something, and you cannot feel relief at losing something you actually wanted. You can only feel relief at putting down something you had been carrying out of loyalty long after it stopped being alive. Chosen one, hold this properly. The biggest goodbye is not being said to you. You have been saying it. Quietly, without ceremony, without ever making a decision you could point at. Over hundreds of small moments where you chose not to send the message, chose not to make the call, chose to spend the evening differently, chose to stop bringing up the subject that never went anywhere. You have been leaving, and because you never announced it to yourself, you have spent the whole departure grieving as though it were happening against your will. That is the twist, and it is a hard one, because it takes away the comfort of being the wronged party, but look at what it gives you in exchange. If things are being done to you, then you are waiting for the season to end, and there is nothing to do but endure. If you are the one moving, then you are not waiting for anything at all. You are already most of the way somewhere, and everything that has felt like loss has actually been the ordinary friction of travel. And it means the ache is not the ache of abandonment. It is the ache of a person who is homesick for a place they have already outgrown, which is one of the most common and least understood forms of pain there is. You can be homesick for a house you would never move back into. That does not make the leaving wrong. It makes you human, and it means you love the house. So the sentence I want to leave you with, before we bring this all the way home, is not the sentence you came here for. You did not lose them. You outgrew the room you shared, and heaven let it happen quietly, so that nobody had to be made into a villain in order for you to be moved. That is the mercy in the silence. That is why there was no explanation. An explanation would have required somebody to be at fault, and nobody was at fault, and God was not willing to damage two people in order to move one. Chosen one, let that settle before we do anything with it, because a truth that size needs a moment to find its place. If you are the one who has been moving, then a number of things you have been holding against yourself have to be put down tonight. Put down the idea that you are difficult to love. You are not difficult to love. You have been difficult to reach because you have been in transit, and people cannot easily hold on to somebody who is in motion. Those are entirely different accusations, and only one of them was ever true. Put down the idea that you should have tried harder. You did try. You tried in the specific way that people try when they are moving and do not know it, which is by attempting to bring everybody with you, which nobody has ever successfully done in the history of the world. Put down the idea that you owe anybody an explanation for a departure you never planned. You cannot apologize for growth. You can be kind about it. You can be gentle in how you speak about people. You can refuse to rewrite them as villains, but you cannot apologize for it, and every attempt to do so has left you standing in a doorway with one foot in a room you have already left. And put down, finally, the thing that has been heaviest, the belief that if you had been a better person, none of this would have happened. A better person would have been moved too. That is what better people do. They get moved. Chosen one, I want to give you the way this actually feels from here forward, because I do not want you expecting the wrong thing and concluding it is not working. It does not feel like triumph. Nobody tells you that. You have been imagining that the far side of this is a kind of vindication, where the fog lifts and you look back and feel unmistakably free. What actually happens is far quieter and much better. One day you will realize you have gone a whole week without constructing a defense. Somebody will have misunderstood something about you, and you will have noticed it and simply not built the case. And you will only realize afterwards that the machinery did not start. One day you will hear their name in a conversation, and your body will not do the thing it does. There will be a small internal event, like a page turning, and then nothing, and you will go on listening to whoever is speaking. One day you will be somewhere ordinary, a bus, a queue, a kitchen at an unremarkable hour, and you will notice that you are not carrying anything, not happy exactly, unburdened, and you will not be able to explain to anyone why standing in a kitchen with nothing on your back felt like the best moment of that year. That is what freedom is. It is not an emotion, it is an absence. and absences are almost impossible to notice while they are arriving. So do not go looking for a feeling, go looking for the things that stop happening. Chosen one, before we move into the closing of this message, I want to say something to the ones who are struggling to receive any of it. Some of you have been listening for a long time now, and there is a part of you standing at the back of the room with its arms folded, and that part has been saying, "This is nice, and my situation is not going to change." I want to speak to that part directly, and not to argue with it. That part of you is not your enemy. It has been standing at the back of rooms for a long time because it got its heart broken by hope more than once. It is not cynical, it is protective. It watched you get lifted up by messages like this before, and then watched the ordinary Tuesday arrive and grind it all away, and it decided that it would rather be disappointed early than devastated late. You do not have to convert that part tonight. Leave it standing where it is. Let it be skeptical. Nothing in what I have described requires belief in order to function. You do not have to believe that the last ordinary day matters in order to write it down. You do not have to feel anything to say 4 words tomorrow morning. The mechanism does not run on conviction. It runs on repetition, and repetition is available to people who are not yet convinced. That is the good news for the exhausted. This does not ask you for faith you do not currently have. It asks you for a very small action performed slightly more often than you feel like performing it. Chosen one, as we move into this next unfolding, let me give you the picture that holds all of it, because you are going to need something you can see when the words have faded. Think of a ship leaving a harbor at night. Nobody on the quay makes a decision. There is no argument. The ropes are untied by somebody whose job it is, quietly, and the vessel begins to move at a speed so slow that for the first several minutes, it is genuinely difficult to tell whether anything is happening at all. And here is the thing about standing on the deck of that ship. The lights of the harbor do not appear to be moving away from you. They appear to be going out, one by one. A window here, a street further back. The whole thing is dimming, and if you did not know you were on a ship, you would swear the town was dying. That is exactly what the last 2 years have looked like from where you are standing. Lights going out, one after another, in a town you love. And you have been grieving a town that is perfectly fine and is going to be lit all night, because you are not watching a town die. You are watching a distance open. And notice the last part of that picture, because it is the part that matters. The person who untied the rope was not your enemy. They were doing a job. They did it quietly, at night, deliberately, without waking anybody, because waking the whole harbor to say farewell would have made a scene out of something that was only ever a departure. Now let me tell you what you owe the people on that quay, because this is where a lot of people become something ugly. There is a version of this message that would let you walk away feeling superior, where you conclude that you outgrew them, and outgrowing quietly becomes a way of looking down. I want to close that door firmly, because it is the most common corruption of everything I have said tonight. You are not better than the people you are moving away from. You are not further along in some universal ranking of human beings. You are on a different assignment, and different is not higher. A person who spends 40 years faithfully in one town, in one job, holding one family together, is not behind you. They may well be carrying something you could not carry for a fortnight. So here are the 3 things you owe them, and I want you to hold these carefully, because they are what separates a person who is growing from a person who is simply becoming cold. The first is that you owe them the truth about the past. You are not permitted to rewrite them into villains in order to make your leaving comfortable. That is the easiest and most tempting thing in the world, and it costs you something enormous. Because a person who reinterprets their whole history as a series of people who failed them ends up unable to trust anybody, including themselves. Let the good parts stay good. Let them have been what they actually were. The second is that you owe them your silence about the details. Whatever you know about them from the years of closeness, you carry it out of the room, and you do not set it down anywhere. Not in a conversation that starts with, "I probably should not say this." That is the price of having been trusted, and it does not expire when the relationship does. And the third is that you owe them the door left unlocked, not open, unlocked. There is a difference, and it is the whole of this. An open door means you are still standing there waiting, and we have spent this entire message getting your hand off it. An unlocked door means you are not standing there. You have gone on with your life, and if in 5 years they arrive with something genuinely new in their hands, they will not find a wall. Most of them will not come. Some of them will. And the ones who do will find a person who did not spend 5 years rehearsing a speech, which is the only condition under which anybody has ever been genuinely reconciled to anybody. Chosen one, I want to deal with the hardest version of this, because for some of you the person did not leave, and cannot leave, and never will. Some of you are married to somebody who has quietly moved away from you inside the same house. Some of you have a child who has become polite. Some of you have a parent in a chair in a room you visit every week, and the visits are pleasant, and there has not been a real conversation in 9 years. That is a quiet subtraction that does not have the mercy of distance, and I am not going to pretend otherwise. But hear this carefully, because there is something available to you that is not available to anybody else. A person who has genuinely stopped knocking, who has done the work of releasing the version of the relationship that ended, becomes capable of something almost nobody in that situation can do. They become able to be present with the person in front of them, rather than with the person they lost. You have been sitting in rooms with somebody and grieving them at the same time. That is why the visits exhaust you. You are not tired from the conversation. You are tired from conducting a funeral and a conversation simultaneously. Bury the one who is gone, properly, with the ceremony we described, and then go and meet the person who is actually in the chair, who is a different person, and who is not required to be the old one in order to be worth an afternoon. Some of the most surprising restorations I have ever seen have happened exactly there. Not because somebody changed, because somebody stopped being met with an invoice for who they used to be. Chosen one, let me gather everything we have walked through, because I want you to be able to carry the whole shape of it, and not just the feeling of it. We began with a quiet subtraction, an ending that arrived without ceremony, and we saw that the reason it hurts more than betrayal is not weakness, but architecture. Betrayal comes with a story that can be filed. Silence comes with nothing, so the mind keeps the folder open and rehearses it every day, and that is where your energy has been going. We found the last ordinary day, the afternoon you did not know was the last one, and we placed a marker on it, because a mind that is finally given a timestamp can begin to close what it has been holding open. We named the grief with no funeral, and we made it legitimate, because unnamed pain is the heaviest kind there is, and half of what you were carrying was the extra weight of believing you had no right to be carrying anything at all. We found the unanswered door, and we said the sentence that sets people free, which is not that they hate me, and not that I was not enough, but simply that nobody is home, and we took the hand off the wood. We learned the clean cut, and how to tell a pruning from an attack by the shape of the wound, rather than by how much it hurt. We learned the echo test, so that when something from a closed season returns, you will know within 30 seconds whether it is carrying anything new or simply arriving in a warmer voice at a moment when you happen to be tired. We uncovered the mechanism, which is that understanding and integration are two different operations happening in two different halves of you, and that a person can know something perfectly and remain entirely unchanged by it because the message never crossed the gap. And then we turned the whole thing over and found that the goodbye was never being said to you. You have been the one moving, quietly, without announcing it to yourself. And every ache you interpreted as abandonment was the ordinary friction of travel. That is the shape of it. 6 ideas and 1 reversal. If you remember nothing else, remember the reversal, because it is the one that will find you at 3 in the morning. Chosen one, I want to tell you one more short thing about somebody, and then we will bring this home. There was a woman who lost a friendship of 22 years, not to a fight, to a slow thinning that neither of them ever discussed. And for 3 years afterwards, she carried a specific torment, which was that she could not stop composing the message. She composed it in the shower. She composed it while driving. She had, by her own count, written and deleted it more than 40 times. And what finally released her was not a decision to stop. She had made that decision constantly, and it never survived a bad evening. What released her was noticing something. She realized that in every version of the message she had ever composed, she was explaining herself, not asking a question, not offering anything, explaining. And she understood, sitting in a car outside a supermarket, that she did not actually want the friendship back. She wanted to be understood correctly by somebody who had already made up their mind. Those are entirely different desires, and only one of them was ever achievable, and it was not the one she had spent 3 years chasing. She never sent the message. What she said afterwards is the thing I want to give you. She said, "I stopped needing to be understood by people who had already finished reading me." Say that to yourself sometime this week. There are people in your life who finished reading you at chapter 4 and formed their opinion and closed the book. You have been standing beside them, holding chapters 5 through 19, insisting they take it. They are not going to take it, and the freedom is not in making them. The freedom is in discovering that the book was never written for them. Chosen one more thing before the closing, and it is for the ones who are frightened rather than sad. Some of you are not grieving what left. You are terrified of what is coming, because a quiet subtraction always implies a quiet arrival, and if you have been let down enough times, an approaching good thing is more frightening than a departing bad one. I understand that better than you might expect. Hope is not a comfortable feeling for somebody who has paid for it before. It has a taste of danger in it. And so people in your position develop a strategy that looks like humility and is actually armor. You keep your expectations deliberately low so that the fall, when it comes, is short. Here is what I would say to that, gently. You are not protecting yourself from disappointment. Disappointment arrives at exactly the same weight whether you braced for it or not. What you are actually doing is spending the good season in the same posture as the bad one, which means that even if everything I have described tonight comes to pass, you will experience it through glass. You do not have to become naive. You simply have to be willing, in small ways, to let a good thing be good while it is happening, rather than waiting until it is over to decide whether it was safe. Practice that this week on something tiny. A conversation that goes well. A morning that is easier than expected. Let it be good in the moment, out loud, even if only to yourself. That is how a person who has been braced for years learns to stand up straight again, not by deciding to trust, by collecting small, unpunished pleasures until the body updates its own arithmetic. Chosen one, as we come into this final unfolding, let your spirit take hold of the magnitude of what has actually been happening in your life. Because there is one more layer, and it is the largest. Every serious story of a person being repositioned contains the same strange element, and almost nobody notices it because it is so quiet. Joseph is sold and ends up in a house in Egypt, then in a cell under it, and the text keeps mentioning something almost absent-mindedly. Nobody is with him. His brothers are gone. His father believes he is dead. The man he interpreted a dream for forgot him for 2 full years. Every single relationship in that story is subtracted, one at a time, until there is a man alone in a room with nothing but what is actually inside him. And when the moment finally arrives, when he is brought up out of that place and stood in front of the most powerful man in the world, what does he have to offer? Not a network, not a reputation, not a single person willing to vouch for him. He has the thing that was built in the room. That is all he has, and it is enough. And it is enough precisely because it was built somewhere nobody was watching. Moses is another. 40 years on the backside of a desert with animals, at an age when everybody assumes a life is finished. No audience, no progress, nothing that would photograph as advancement. And the man who comes out of that silence is not the man who went into it. The one who went in was somebody who solved a problem with his fists and then panicked. The one who came out could stand in front of an empire without raising his voice. Elijah runs into a wilderness and asks to die. And what he gets is not a rebuke. He gets food and sleep, twice, before anybody says anything spiritual to him at all. And then the famous part, where God is not in the wind, not in the earthquake, not in the fire, but in a sound so quiet that the old translations reached for a phrase like a still small voice. and the more accurate rendering is closer to the sound of a thin silence. The sound of a thin silence. Chosen one, that is the phrase I want you to carry out of this message, because you have spent this season assuming that the silence around your life is an absence of God, and the oldest text in your tradition is telling you that a thin silence is one of the specific places where God is most reliably located. Not in the wind. The wind was impressive and it was empty. Not in the earthquake, which shook everything and delivered nothing. In the quiet that came afterwards, when there was nothing left to look at. You have had your wind. You have had your earthquake. What you are in now is the third thing, and you have been treating it as evidence of abandonment. Let me put this as plainly as I know how. The people who leave loudly are the wind. The circumstances that shook your life were the earthquake. And the season you are in right now, the one that feels like nothing is happening, is the only one of the three in which anything real has ever been said to anybody. So stop asking why it is so quiet. Start asking what is being said in it. Chosen one, I want to give you a way of listening in that quiet, because this is the last practical thing and it is the one I most want you to keep. Every morning this week, before anything else, before the phone, before the day begins to make demands, give yourself 2 minutes of nothing. Not prayer, exactly. Not meditation with a technique. 2 minutes of sitting somewhere with nothing running. And in those 2 minutes, ask one question and then do not answer it yourself. What is being made in me? Then wait. Almost certainly nothing will come the first several times, and that is normal and not a failure. Somewhere in the second week, usually while you are doing something else entirely, an answer will arrive in a form you were not expecting. A word, an image, a memory that seems unrelated, a sudden clarity about a decision you had not been thinking about. That is the two halves finding each other for a moment. It is the same event we described earlier, arriving from the other direction. And I want you to write down whatever comes, even if it seems absurd, because the part of you that answers that question does not speak in sentences, and it does not repeat itself politely. It says a thing once, sideways, and then goes quiet again for a fortnight. The people who get through seasons like yours intact are almost always the ones who kept some kind of record, not a diary of events, a record of the strange things that arrived when they stopped asking loudly. Chosen one, let me show you where all of this is going, one last time, because I want the picture in your mind to be specific and not vague. There is a version of your life about 18 months from now, and I want to describe an ordinary week in it. You wake up, and the first thing in your mind is a task, not a person. You get through a morning without constructing a single defense. Somebody asks how you are, and you answer honestly rather than automatically. And the honesty costs you nothing because you are not managing an impression. There are fewer people in your week than there were 2 years ago, and it does not feel like scarcity. It feels like and you have it, and it is available on ordinary Tuesdays rather than at rare peaks. And once in a while, usually at an unremarkable moment, the old thing will surface. A song, a street, a date on a calendar. And you will feel a small, clean sadness that lasts about a minute and does not take the afternoon with it. And afterwards you will notice something remarkable, that you are glad it happened. Not glad it ended, glad it happened. That is the far side. Not triumph, not vindication, not everybody coming back and admitting they were wrong. Just a life that is quieter, smaller, warmer, and entirely yours, run by somebody who no longer needs an explanation in order to move. Chosen one, hear this one final reframe before we go into the closing, because it is the sentence I would want said over me if I were where you are. The biggest goodbye of your life is not a loss you have to survive. It is the last thing standing between you and a life you would actually choose. And it is quiet for one reason, because heaven does not need to shout at somebody who is already moving. Chosen one, there is one question left, and it is the one you have been quietly holding since the very first minute, so let me answer it before anything else happens. You want to know whether you will ever feel about anybody the way you felt about what you lost. The honest answer is no, and I want you to hear why that is good news, rather than a sentence. You will not feel that again, because that feeling was made of two things together. It was made of the person and it was made of who you were when you met them, and that second ingredient is gone permanently. You cannot be 23 again, or newly hopeful again, or unguarded in the particular way you were unguarded before anything had happened to you. So no, it will not be the same. What people never tell you is that it can be considerably better, and that better does not feel the way the first one felt. The first one felt like electricity. The next one, whatever form it takes, feels like recognition. It is quieter. It does not keep you awake. It does not require you to become anybody. It arrives with a strange sensation of relief, as if you had been holding something up for years and were suddenly permitted to set it on a table. Most people miss it entirely because they are still scanning for electricity, and recognition does not announce itself with sparks. It announces itself with ease, and a person who has only ever known love as effort does not recognize ease as love. They call it boring and go looking for the fire again. Do not do that. When ease arrives, sit still in it long enough to find out what it is. Chosen one, and one more thing, for the ones who are hearing this at an age where you have started to believe the good part is behind you. There is a strange pattern that runs through every story of this kind, and it is that the significant thing almost never happens in the season people expect. Abraham was old. Sarah laughed at the idea, and the laughing was not disrespect. It was the ordinary reaction of somebody who had done the arithmetic. Moses was 80 and had not led anything in 4 decades. Naomi came home empty and told people to stop calling her by her own name because she considered her story over, and the last chapter of that book has her holding a child that changes the direction of a nation. Not one of them was in the season anybody would have chosen. Every single one of them was in the aftermath of a subtraction. I am not promising you a specific outcome, and I never will, but I am telling you that the pattern in the oldest stories we have is consistent enough to be worth noticing. The quiet part is not the epilogue. In almost every case that anybody bothered to write down, the quiet part was the beginning of the chapter that mattered. You are not late. You are cleared. Chosen one last thing before the closing, and it is small and it matters more than most of what came before it. You are going to want to tell somebody about tonight. That instinct is good, and I want to guide it, because most people damage a real experience within about 48 hours by handing it to the wrong person. Do not take this to the person you are grieving. That should be obvious, and it is not, because there is a version of you that will want to use tonight as material, to show them you have understood something, to demonstrate growth. Any message that begins with, "I have realized," something is still a message asking to be received, and we have spent this whole hour getting your hand off that door. Do not take it to the friend who solves things. You know who they are. You will describe a slow, quiet ending, and within 90 seconds they will be giving you a plan, and you will leave that conversation feeling strangely worse and unable to say why. You will feel worse because a plan implies a problem, and what you are carrying is not a problem. It is a loss, and losses do not want to be fixed. They want to be witnessed. Take it to the person who can hear something without doing anything about it. There is usually one. Sometimes it is somebody you do not know especially well, which is often why it works. Say the smallest true version of it. Something ended this year and nobody noticed, and I have been carrying it. And then let them say almost nothing, and let the almost nothing be enough, because being witnessed once by one ordinary person does more for an unwitnessed grief than 100 hours of thinking about it alone. And if there is genuinely nobody, and for some of you tonight, there is genuinely nobody, then let this be the witnessing. I am telling you plainly that I believe you. Something ended. It counted. You handled it better than you think you did, and it was seen. Chosen one, hold one more sentence before we go into the stillness, because it is the one I would want somebody to say over me. You are not behind. You are not damaged. You are not somebody who keeps getting left. You are a person who has been walking quietly for a long time in a direction you were not consulted about, and the walking has cost you exactly what walking costs everybody, which is the company of those who stayed at the last place. That is not a tragedy. That is the oldest and most ordinary shape a meaningful life has ever taken, And every single person you admire paid the identical price, and almost none of them mention it. Chosen one, if this message has reached something in you tonight, do one thing for me before we go into the closing, and it is not for my benefit. Somewhere out there is a person who has had the same year you have had. Their house went quiet the same way. They lost somebody who never left the city, and they are further into it than you are, and they have started to believe there is something fundamentally wrong with them, and they have not said a word about it to anybody. Because how do you begin that conversation? If you press the like button on this message, it moves toward them. That is all it does. It is a small mechanical thing, and it puts this in front of somebody who is sitting in a dark room at an hour when nobody should be awake, believing they are the only one. And in the comments, I would like you to write 2 words if this found you. Just 2. Write, "It is finished." Not as an announcement about your life, as a marker. There will be hundreds of them there, and somebody scrolling at 3 in the morning is going to see that they are not the only person in the world who lost something without a funeral this year. That is worth more than anything you could say about me. Chosen one, we are coming to the part of this message where the talking stops and something else takes over, and I want you to prepare for it properly, because what happens in the next few minutes is not a summary. Everything up to this point has been understanding. Understanding is necessary, and it is not sufficient, and we spent a long time on precisely why. So now we are going to do the other thing. We are going to take what your mind has been given and hand it to the part of you that actually decides. Wherever you are, get still. If you are driving, keep your eyes where they belong and simply listen. If you are able to close your eyes, close them. Both feet on the ground, if you can manage it. Let your hands rest. Let your shoulders drop away from your ears one more time. Now I want you to bring the room to mind, not the person, the room. Whatever space in your life has gone quiet. A kitchen where more people used to sit. A house you drove past. A room in a building where you used to work. A phone screen with a conversation on it that stops on a date some time ago. See it as it actually is now. Do not decorate it. Do not fill it back up. See the empty part of it. Let yourself notice how much space there is where something used to be. Now, in that room, I want you to see a door, and I want you to see that the door is closed, not slammed, not locked from spite. Simply closed, the way a door is closed by somebody who did it carefully so as not to wake anybody in the house. Walk over to it. Put your hand flat against the wood. Feel that it is solid. And now say this inside yourself, in your own voice. I am not going to knock anymore. Stay with your hand there for a second. Feel how much of your life has been organized around that surface. All the energy that has gone into the knocking, the years of it. Now take your hand off the door. Just that. Do not open it. Do not lock it. Do not make any decision about it at all. Simply remove your hand and let it fall to your side. And now turn around. Notice the light in the rest of that room, which you have not looked at properly in a very long time because your face has been pointed at the wood. Notice the windows. Notice that there is a whole other side to a room you thought you knew. There is a chair in that room, and somebody has already put it there for you, and you are not going to have to explain to anybody why you are tired. Sit down. Now, chosen one, place your hand on your heart and declare this with me. I am not being rejected. I am being moved. Say it again, and let it be your voice this time and not mine. I am not being rejected. I am being moved. I am not the one who was left. I am the one who has been traveling. What has gone quiet in my life did not go quiet because I am unwanted. It went quiet because room is being made. I release the door I have been knocking on. I release the explanation I was never given. I release the version of me who needed one. I am whole. Nothing is missing. Nothing is broken. And what has been taken out of my hands was taken so that my hands would be free when the real thing arrives. Feel the weight of what you just said, because those were not decorative words. Something happens when a person says a true thing out loud in their own voice, with their hand on their own chest. You are not informing God of anything. You are informing yourself through the 2 channels that almost never carry the same message at the same time. Your ears hear it as language, and your body feels it as vibration under your palm. And for one moment, the analytical half and the meaning-making half receive the identical sentence at the identical instant. That is why every serious tradition on earth, without any of them consulting each other, arrived at spoken declaration. Not because words are magic, because a divided instrument can be brought into agreement by sound in a way. It cannot be brought into agreement by thought. You have just done, for a few seconds, the exact thing this entire message has been describing. Chosen one, tonight, before you sleep, I want you to do one more small thing, and then we are finished. When you are lying down and the house is quiet and the day has finally stopped asking things of you, put your hand back on your chest, exactly where it is now. Feel the steady, patient rhythm underneath it. That rhythm has not missed a single beat through everything you have described tonight. Not one. It kept going through the worst week. It kept going at 3 in the morning. It has never once required your attention or your gratitude in order to continue. And say, quietly, into the dark, so that only you and heaven hear it, that one is finished. Then sleep. That is the whole assignment. Chosen one, I want to bless you before you go, and I want to be specific, because vague blessings comfort nobody. I bless the discernment you have grown in the dark, and I bless your refusal to become cold while growing it. I bless your capacity to sit in a quiet house without filling it with the wrong voices. I bless your hands, which have let go of more than anybody knows. I bless the restraint that nobody saw and nobody thanked you for, and I bless the warmth that survived it. I bless the door you are going to walk past without knocking, and I bless the chair that is waiting on the other side of the room, and I bless the version of you who is coming, the slower one, the one with the pause in them, the one who can be liked without needing it and can love without invoicing for it. May they arrive gently, and may you recognize them when they do. Go quietly, go whole, go without knocking. Nothing has been taken from you, chosen one. Something has been cleared for you. And wherever you are as this ends, in a car, in a kitchen, in a bed at an hour when nobody should be awake, know this. The quiet around you tonight is not the sound of being forgotten. It is the sound of a room being prepared, and you were never carrying any of it alone. You never have been. It is sealed, it is finished,